sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Happy Friday, ladies and gentlemen. We've made it to the weekend. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. Long time no see if you weren't here last night. But we have a big show tonight. I actually have 7 news stories tonight. Seven. So I'm going to try my best to be a little bit shorter with covering stories. I know that that is something I do like to listen to feedback. And one of the things that I've heard from you guys is, sometimes I can be a little long-winded. So I am going to try to do better at making these news story segments a little bit shorter. So just letting you know, I hear you. And we do have 7 stories tonight. So tonight will be the test. Tonight will be the test. Oh, buddy, we have so much to discuss. I do want to start off by giving shout outs to people in the chat. Let's make sure the camera is all right. Let's go ahead and start off giving shout outs to all of you peeps in the chat. What's going on? Miguel says, happy Friday. Peace. Shout out to Tim. Love George. Have a great show, Sabby. And don't forget this nails got your 100K YouTube plaque. LOL, free Palestine and vote independent. Damn it. Tear down the duopoly. Thank you for the reminder. Yes. Thank you so much for reminding me again. I do need to get the nails so I can hang up that plaque. So I'll take care of that. Hopefully this weekend. What's going on, New York Varsity? Happy Friday, Sabs. Great show yesterday. Let's go. Thank you. Greetings, Kalimba. Does anybody know that show with subtitles on Netflix? Sabby suggested a couple of nights ago, a Korean show, I think. Oh, Hellbound. Hellbound, all one word. There's 2 seasons. So if you're starting it now, you're in luck, because when I started it, there was only 1 season and we had to wait to see if there was going to be a second season. So if you're starting it now, I say now is a good time to start it, because you can go straight from season 1 to season 2, because there's cliffhanger at the end of season 1. Shout out to Lawrence Johnson, says free Palestine. Greetings, CBC voter, says happy Friday, Sabby Sabs and Eric T. Red. Shout out to Bruno. Is it Bruno Mars? Bruno sends a lot of smiles. Greetings, Yvonne says, hi, Sabby. The picture in your earlier video is not the actual shooter. The shooter's jacket was black with no pockets, and the guy with the full face shown had a green jacket with double pockets. I thought I addressed that during the story, that there were a number of pictures. I'll go back and check, but thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Thon. Happy Friday, fam. Oh, snap. That po-po can't not pass go. Stay in jail, you mofo. Oh, Thon, you can be you going to bust a rhyme, Thon? You going to bust a rhyme? Greetings, Mark says, holy shit, Sabby. I thought today was Saturday. Why didn't I? Knew today was Friday. You want to know why? I got a flat tire this morning. And you guys can tell me if you had this experience, but I got a flat tire this morning. Part of it, I think, is my fault. It was the same tire. I had to continue to put air into the tire. Like every time it would get cold, I would have to put air into it. And then this morning when I was leaving the gym, and all of a sudden my car was just like, and I was not in a Snoop video. And it was just like, And I was like, what is going on? Now, luckily, I made it home because I wasn't that far away from the gym. But as soon as I got home, I looked at my car and I was like, oh my God, the tire was like busted, man. So I had to call AAA. AAA came, they had to tow the car to a shop so that they can replace the tire. It was a mess, man. And then I had to go pick the car up from the shop. And at the shop, the guy was laughing. Like, he was just like, he said, what happened? I was like, oh. All right. Greetings, Sarah says, hiya. What's up, Sarah? Greetings, Hannah sends a smile. Shout out to TL. I can't see the other parts because unfortunately that's how YouTube is. But it's my birthday. Happy birthday, TL Orca. Let's give TL Orca a big happy birthday in the chat. Greetings, Shalom says Hezbollah is blessed in Jewish Bible. Psalm 33:12. Hezbollah is G's in Ethiopian Jewish Bible. That's interesting. Sorry, I pointed you already. What's up, William says, sup, Sabby. Greetings, Soulful says, hello, everybody. Shout out to Benny says, yo. Greetings, Anonymous says, doobie doobie doo. Shout out to V Papale says, did Elon actually debate Gigi or is that just quick clickbait? It's worse than debate. Worse than debate. You will see. Greetings, Shaz says, hey, Sabby and Famalam. Shout out to Sammy says, watching from Denmark. Hello, everyone. Hello, Denmark in the house. Greetings, Kay says, has this started? Yes, I have, Kay. Shout out to Notori sends fire and love. Greetings, Jeffrey says, I believe the shooter is a woman. Interesting. Interesting, Jeffrey. Why do you think that? Shout out to BN says, happy birthday to TL Orca. Greetings, Yaz says, Sabby, have you noticed how schizophrenia is being used to unalive Black Americans? It is seen in the Jordan Neely and Sonia Massie cases. So the Sonia Massie one, we're going to get into the update about that tonight. So you'll hear a little bit more about that, about the mental health. Greetings, C. Shata says, hey, Sabby. Shout out to the Boycott says, love and fire. Shout out to Sebastian says, hey, y'all. Hey, Sebastian. Red sends a clap. India says, doobie doobie doo. And Cuquita says, Sabby, hello, everyone. Hello to you, Cuquita. Interesting name. And shout out to James Kelly, who is from Richmond, Virginia. What's up, Richmond in the house? Layers of Snark says, what a week, huh? Yeah, what a crazy week. What a crazy week. It's been rough, man. Oh, my God. So, yeah. And, of course, shout out to Eric. Happy December Friday to one and all. Yay. Greetings, Krista says, hi, Sabby. I'm looking forward to another awesome show tonight. I always learn so much from your videos. Thank you. That is great to hear. That is my goal here is to teach people and let them know what is going on that they're not hearing from corporate media, basically. My goal is to fill in the gaps. And it is very cold here. I don't know where everyone in the chat is located, but today was the day that it became very cold. It was that bitter, bitter cold. So, yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's show's theme is the walls are closing in. And you'll see that with many of these stories tonight. Again, like I said, we actually have 7 stories tonight. So I do want to go ahead and give a shout out to Sabby patrons and go ahead and dive in and tell you what we're going to discuss tonight. So greetings to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories here. Ultimate, Sabinators. There's also a little group called Sabsters. They're like, And of course, there are Sabbies. Hello to you as well. And we also have members. Thank you guys so much. And you can see all of their names featured here. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you so much. I do need to update this list. So I think there's a couple other patrons I need to add as well. So I should have that updated by Tuesday. But thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate all of your hard work. So let's go ahead and dive in, shall we? Shall we dive in, fam? Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. Okay. Geez, we have so much to cover. Let's go ahead and show that thumbnail because there were a couple of stories that broke today. And I know I'm not going to be live on Sunday. So I said I need to go ahead. Let's cover all of them. So tonight we are discussing George Galloway wins X lawsuit. George Galloway versus Elon Musk. This is huge. I'm surprised more people haven't covered this, but George Galloway sought a lawsuit and he won for defamation. So that's important. And it makes me wonder, is this a sign of things to come? We're also going to discuss Charlamagne the God versus The View. Charlamagne the God, if you have not seen this, he has been on The View recently and he is calling out Joe Biden's actions for pardoning Hunter Biden. But what does this mean in the grand scheme of things, right? Like, is Charlamagne the God going to tell you not to support the Democratic Party because of their hypocrisy? I don't think so. So we're going to tell you about this role that Charlamagne plays in corporate media and why he continues to be invited onto corporate media. That's a part of the walls closing in as well. We're also going to discuss, this story is insane. I don't know if people have been paying attention to what's happening in France right now, but it is not looking good to President Emmanuel Macron. France is now in a official collapse. So we're going to get into what happened in France and why Macron has that look on his face. He is not having a good time, I think he should resign, and I'll get into all of that. We're also going to discuss, ladies and gentlemen, Sonia Massie's officer has been freed. This is an update on the Sonia Massie shooting that we covered a while back. So we're going to update you just so you know, like, where this case is. I think it's insane that they allowed this officer to walk freely. I think he should remain in jail. I do think he is a danger to society, but we're going to get into that story. Now, we're also going to discuss, I told you we have 3 bonus stories as well. The California fake reparations. California is doing this thing and they're trying to pass it off as reparations, but it's not. It's not. So we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about how that could be a problem because of the Supreme Court decision as well. We're also going to cover the breaking story today about the TikTok ban in the United States, which could happen this week if things do not change with ownership. And I'm going to talk about like how that will affect all of you, but not just all of you that like TikTok. We're talking about the people that actually make a living off of TikTok and where all this started to begin with. And I think many of you, if you've been watching me for a long time, you know where all of this started, right? You know where all of this started. The other bonus story that we are going to cover, this is wild. So hold on to your seat for this one. The Black church has officially turned on Al Sharpton. Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen. They are not happy with Al Sharpton taking that money from Kamala Harris. So this story broke today. We're going to cover that one as well. And I think I got all of the TikTok story. That's the bonus one. And then also the Al Sharpton update story and the Cali reparations story. Okay, so we have 7 stories to get into tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to try my best to keep them minimal. I'm going to try. You know, I like to talk. I'm going to try to go there. Okay. So the walls are closing in, and that is the theme of tonight's show, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And we're going to go ahead and get started with that very first story. Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. If you have not heard this yet today, it appears that the TikTok ban could go into effect for the United States this week. As soon as this week, the U.S. DC, that District Court of Appeals, has decided to move forward with that case. They do not believe that it is censorship. They do not believe that this is an infringement on the right of free speech. And they believe that China is the ultimate threat. Of course, right? Of course. Let's get into this story, ladies and gentlemen. People on TikTok are already freaking out, and I don't blame them. Here we go. The walls are closing in. TikTok ban could begin this week in the United States.
Well, the fate of TikTok is hanging in the balance after an appeals court ruled unanimously today to uphold the federal government's ban on the app in the U.S. This means TikTok would be removed from app stores if its Chinese parent company, ByteDance, does not sell to an American owner by January 19th. The DOJ argues the app is a national security threat under its current ownership. Now, this ban was first signed into law back in April, and it is spurring backlash from many of TikTok's 170 million U.S. users. NBC News Now anchor Savannah Sellers has been following the story from the beginning for us. Savannah, tell us what the court said today in this ruling and what comes next for TikTok between now and January 19th.
Yeah, absolutely, Vicki. So we really were waiting here today, unsure of what we would hear from this 3-judge panel, because back in September, we got a little bit of a clue when some questions were asked of the TikTok team. And we thought, they do seem pretty critical of TikTok, but there were also issues and concerns about free speech here. So we did not know how this is going to go. Ultimately, this panel, as you mentioned, unanimously deciding to uphold this law that could effectively ban TikTok by January 19th. I want to read you some of what we saw in the majority opinion today, and it really centers on that national security argument. Here it is on your screen. Here, the government acted solely to protect that freedom from a foreign adversary nation and to limit that adversary's ability to gather data on people in the United States.
That is the BS excuse that they're running with. I think we all know that China is the excuse for them to say we need to ban this app. And I think we know the real reason why they want to shut down TikTok. And that is because after October 7th, there were a number of TikTok videos that were produced that showed the truth about what Israel was and what Israel was doing. There were a number of videos that talked about the history of that region and the creation of Israel. And we cannot forget again that the ADL were big proponents of shutting down TikTok. And that's actually what started a lot of this rift. Now, for those who say, well, it was only Biden who wanted this to happen, only the Biden-Harris administration, I do want to remind you that Donald Trump also wanted to ban TikTok in 2020. Now, that didn't happen. It didn't go through. From what I understand now, he appears to be not in that direction, that he doesn't think that TikTok should be banned. You know, there are also investors that are supporting him that also are invested in TikTok. So again, if you follow the money, you'll understand why a lot of things happen in politics. So it's interesting that the court is trying to move forward with this right before 2025. Because again, like I told you, now Donald Trump has changed his opinion about TikTok because of the investors that are involved in that there.
Now, our viewers might remember this is because the owner of TikTok is a company called ByteDance that has Chinese ownership. You'll see that here in this statement. ByteDance and its TikTok entities have a demonstrated history of manipulating the content on their platforms, including at the direction of the PRC. Notably, TikTok never squarely denies that it has ever manipulated content on the TikTok platform at the direction of the PRC.
So I don't think that TikTok manipulates the content on their platform. The difference with TikTok, unlike YouTube and some other platforms, is that their algorithm is different. So if you struggle with the algorithm on YouTube, you can create a video on TikTok and you may go viral just like that. Content creators have found they have an easier time going viral on TikTok than they do on YouTube or Instagram or even Twitter, because TikTok algorithm doesn't work in a certain way that's going to suppress certain subjects, etc. Right? So that's why you've seen a lot more pressure on TikTok. They're going to use the China excuse. I think that's a convenient excuse. But the reality here is that the U.S. government wants to censor that information. They do not want the information on TikTok that's been getting out, particularly when it comes to politics, when it comes to foreign policy. They do not want that information to continue to spread.
Concern here is that there is able to be Chinese influence on this app that has so much American data and so many American users consuming that content on the app. Notably, though, in what eventually got this law in the first place put there, any type of evidence about what that national security concern would be was redacted. So there's no smoking gun, so to speak, which is a lot of what TikTok has pointed to.
You know, Savannah, what is TikTok saying here in terms of the response to the decision today? And also, there's a big wild card here in terms of what President-elect Trump will do with TikTok, because he's going to be inaugurated just one day after this ban is set to go into effect. Would he have any kind of power over the app come January 20th?
Absolutely. So quickly, I'll answer your first question. We are still waiting on an official response from TikTok on this. I'm following up with them. I'll let you know when we have it. But a source close to the company did tell me essentially that they're going to ask for this to be paused while they take this to the Supreme Court. We were anticipating that either side that lost here would do so. In terms of President-elect Trump, this is really interesting. So first of all, just in general, he has 90 days to essentially allow an extension on that divestiture. If you remember, that's where the selling the company away from ByteDance, that Chinese ownership. TikTok has never indicated that they are even exploring that whatsoever. We also, though, could see, because the president-elect did say in the last days of his campaign, he will save TikTok, that he just kind of makes this go away altogether in some way. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens over the next month.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a month. Savannah Sellers, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching.
Okay, so here's the thing, folks. Unless they are willing to sell the ownership of TikTok, apparently that ban in the U.S. would move forward more than likely. Like they said, this could be done as soon as this week. Now, TikTok, they believe that the Supreme Court is going to do the right thing. That's the next step for them, to let the Supreme Court handle this. More power to them, that they trust that they trust our Supreme Court is going to do the right thing here. I don't know that could be true. I think a lot of these people are bought and paid off, so they're going to go where the money goes, even though they're supposed to uphold the law. And I do see this as a free speech issue, but they're hoping that the Supreme Court is going to do the right thing. Now, here is something that I really want to express about this TikTok ban. We always got to remember where this started. Now, I told you that Donald Trump wanted to get rid of it in 2020, but we were never this close to the TikTok ban in the US succeeding until this happened. I just want to jog your memory a little bit here.
But we need to talk about TikTok. TikTok, if you will, it is the 24/7 news channel of so many of our young people, and it's like Al Jazeera on steroids, amplifying and intensifying the anti-Semitism and the anti-Zionism with no repercussion.
But I also want to point out that we have a major generational problem. All the polling I've seen, ADL's polling, ICC's polling, independent polling, suggests this is not a left-right gap, folks. The issue in the United States' support for Israel is not left and right. It is young and old.
So you see what's happening here. So this is Jonathan Greenblatt from the ADL. This is just a reminder, folks, where the real push came from. It wasn't until the ADL decided to get involved after October 7th, and they said, no, they're showing these videos on TikTok that are basically telling the truth about Israel. And so they're using the term, it's anti-Semitic, because they're telling the truth about Israel's war crimes and how Israel was created and what Israel has done to the Palestinian people as a whole. So the ADL comes in and says, that's anti-Semitic, shut it down. TikTok's got to go. And that's the dangerous part about saying anything can be anti-Semitic. That's the dangerous part about that. And it was after that we started to see a real push to try to shut TikTok down in the United States. So I just want to remind everybody where the real push came from.
And the numbers of young people who think that Hamas's, massacre was justified is shockingly and terrifyingly high. And so we really have a TikTok problem, a Gen Z problem, that our community needs to put the same brains that gave us Taglit, the same brains that gave us all these other amazing innovations, need to put our energy toward this, like fast. Because again, like divide, it's the wrong game. The real game is the next generation, and the Hamas and their accomplices, the useful idiots in the West, are falling in line in ways that are terrifying. Last, I'll just say, we saw a dramatic change in the language of the activists here in America on October the 8th. The language of groups that we've long tracked, who've long been problematic, like Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voices for Peace, they flipped like this and went to like Iranian propaganda. The language I could show you from their toolkits, because our analysts are in their groups. We saw this again on October the 8th. It was that fast. Like the language in their toolkits was all about the Zionist entity and lots of other language that we recognized from Iranian propaganda.
So you see, any criticism of Zionism, they're also trying to say that that's anti-Semitic too, because obviously Zionism and Judaism is not the same thing, but that's what they're trying to do so that you can't criticize them. It goes from not criticizing Zionism to not criticizing the Israeli government to not criticizing Israel at all. So that's what's important for people to understand, where that push came from and what this is really all about. This is not about China. This is about Israel trying to silence the information about their creation, about the way that they have treated the Palestinian peoples, the oppression, the occupation. This is what this is really about. So people have to remember that. And when it comes to TikTok, I want you to voice it this way. Like when you speak to people about this TikTok ban, don't approach them and say, oh no, I can't do dance videos anymore. No, a lot of people who are not into this are not going to get that. And they're not going to feel any type of empathy if you say that. This is a labor issue. There are over hundreds of thousands of people that are full-time creators on TikTok. Where are those people supposed to go? I'm talking about people that have been on TikTok for years and do really well on TikTok. People that have tried to produce content on other platforms and they weren't able to get the traction because the algorithm was so tough. They got their breakout on TikTok because they were able to do a couple of videos that went crazy viral. So this is a labor issue because those full-time content creators are now, if this happens, they're going to have to look for work elsewhere. Now, for people come to me and say, oh, well, they shouldn't rely on that anyway. They should just have another job or regular job, yada, yada, yada. Why can't they have that as a job? And regular jobs get shut down too, boo. Let's not forget of the university professors that lost their job because they participated in pro-Palestinian marches. That's a real job too. So it can happen anywhere. So the answer shouldn't be, well, why shouldn't they just do something? That shouldn't be the response, because you can do something else and the Zionists and the Israeli lobby can still shut you down at that job as well. This is a labor issue where people, hundreds of thousands of people, stand to lose their employment. Now, I told you about the creators. I didn't mention the other people. We're talking about all those companies that are part of the TikTok shop. That's them too. All the other investors, there are people that are invested in TikTok. That's them too. The people who produce and all the, so it's not just the creators. And there are a lot of Americans that are on TikTok or have some type of job with TikTok or in some way, shape, or form. And for people who are saying, well, those people should just leave TikTok anyway, and they should just produce content on another platform. If those people wanted to be on those platforms, they would be there. They would have already been there. A lot of those creators tried it on other platforms, and they weren't able to get any traction because they couldn't get around the algorithm. TikTok gave them that break. So let's not use that as an excuse. But when you talk to people about this, please bring up the fact that this is a labor issue where all those people stand to lose jobs. It would be the same thing if the government were to shut down Facebook. I know a lot of younger people ain't on Facebook these days, but it would be the same way if the government shut down Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. That's employment for some people. So I want you to think about it that way as well. And I don't think it's fair I really don't. And I'm someone, by the way, I'm not even monetized on TikTok. I don't even know how you get monetized on TikTok. Like, I rarely post on TikTok. Like, I usually go on there to watch other videos. But I mean, like, that's a different place that you can go to see something very quick, very short. And obviously, the strategy that TikTok had and the layout that it had, was doing well. Because if it wasn't doing well, YouTube wouldn't have produced YouTube Shorts. If TikTok wasn't doing so well, Facebook wouldn't have created Facebook Reels. They modeled that after the short form content that TikTok displayed. So TikTok was making way more money. And I see this as, again, we're going back to capitalism. All the people who say that they approve of free market and they think that that's the best way to go and they want healthy competition, I think some of this has to do with the fact that they don't want China to get that money. A lot of these billionaires are like, no, keep the money here. Okay, why didn't someone here in the United States create a TikTok? So that's another thing, to crush competition. So if you say that you love free market and you love competition, why is this country always trying to crush competition abroad? There's a simple answer to this, though. When we look at MCDS, money, corruption, demands, and solutions, this is the analysis of the TikTok ban. Thank you, Eric, for this. When it comes to money, the billionaires see all that money going to China and are using lawfare to muscle in on the action. When it comes to corruption, narrative management is critical to the corporate establishment to keep the corrupt wealth transfer grift going. This is important for people to fully grasp. Now, what is the demand? They're saying TikTok is important and influential. Okay, then let's nationalize and democratize it. Demand it. What's the solution? Break up and nationalize large media corporations. Reorganize them as employee-owned and governed. Reject censorship is number 7 on 11 demands. So this is something that, Eric created this, money, corruption, demands, and solutions, MCDS. This is how we need to ask ourselves when we talk about a lot of the problems that are happening in this country. What is the answer to it? A lot of times people report the problems, but they don't give you a solution. And this is not to say everybody is, that's their thing. That's not everyone's thing. But I think a lot of times, most of us know the problem. The question is, how do you fix it? And I think we can all see that the politicians aren't fixing that. So this has to be something that I want people to start saying this. MCDS. Money, corruption, demand, solutions. And maybe we can make this a thing where more people start saying this. And the more people that say it, I think the more people can wake up and really see that we got to start a movement of our own, because the politicians, they're not going to fix this. They're not on our side. All right. Let's go to some of the comments here in the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Brits Man. Sabby's cute as a button, but her message is brave. Well, thank you. Thanks. Aunt Shawnee says, yeah, they bow down to the Zionists in America. There you go. Beverly, do they think how many people will lose their income? Exactly. That's what I'm saying. A lot of people stand to lose their jobs. Thank you, Tristan. Remember, they come for first, set precedent, get people to say, yes, it's okay. Then they come for the next, and then the next non-conforming info. We are North Korea. Osmond says TikTok banning is because the Zionists want it. Thank you, Tristan. The U.S. plus forced sale of TikTok equals control. Suppress that. And thank you, I know myself. TikTok ban is censorship. These people would ban smoking or signals if counter to their agenda. Exactly. And anyone that's telling you that this TikTok ban is not censorship, please push back on that, because it is. That's how I see it, folks. That's how I see it. All righty, guys. Smash that like button. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and dive into the next story. Now, hold on to your seats for this one, because when I say the walls are closing in, the walls are closing in. You guys know I covered the story a while back where there were reparations activists in California, and they already had the signatures that were needed to pass reparations in California. They are part of the California Reparations Task Force. Apparently, after some type of a call or chat from Gavin Newsom, who everybody wants to run for president, by the way, or everyone in the Democratic Party for some reason, said, no, don't do it. Don't bring that to the floor for a vote. I'm not going to sign it. So they decided not to even bring it to the floor for a vote, even though they had all the signatures. Let me tell you what California is trying to do now. See, they think we're stupid. Okay. See, I wasn't born yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, because see, now California, they have a bill that would allow public university admission priority for slaves' descendants. So you see what they're trying to do now? Okay. So now they're trying to make it, oh, yes, we didn't pass that legislation, but let's try to move on this issue. And I'm going to tell you why this is going to be a problem in just a second. California lawmaker introduced a bill Monday to allow admission priority to the descendants of slaves at the University of California and California State University, two of the largest public university systems in the nation. Now, one of these systems, if I remember correctly, used to have free tuition. That was back in the day. Once upon a time, and I believe City University of New York, was it City University of New York or State University of New York? One of them also had free tuition. It's just wild when you think about it. So it goes on to say here that Assemblymember Isaac Bryan, a Democrat who represents parts of LA, he authored the legislation. He said it would help rectify past and current discrimination at universities. So you see what they're trying to do now? Instead of paying for a debt that is owed, they're trying to tell descendants of slavery, we'll just, let you get priority for college admission through the Cali University system. And that's going to be our way to rectify some of these wrongs. First of all, everyone isn't going to go to college. I covered that story last year about more Gen Z people seeking blue collar jobs and seeking trade schools. So everyone isn't going to go to, and that's going to change as the years go on. We're going to see more and more of that, because what does a college degree mean nowadays? Right? So everybody doesn't want to go to a public university or go to university. So you see what they're trying to do? It goes on to say here, for decades, universities gave preferential admission treatment to donors and their family members, while others tied to legacies of harm were ignored and at times outright excluded. We have a moral responsibility to do all that we can to right those wrongs. So let's go forward here. We're just going to jump ahead. In California, voters approved a ballot measure in 1996 that banned the state from giving preferential treatment based on race, sex, ethnicity, color, or national origin in public employment, education, or contracting. The proposition, which outlawed affirmative action in the public university admissions in the state, was upheld by voters in 2020. Bryant's legislation would permit, but not mandate, preferential admissions treatment for the descendants of slaves. And so I'm glad they said that, because I was going to bring up this. Don't we all remember that the Supreme Court overturned affirmative action at universities? So how is he going to get this legislation by the Supreme Court? They just come up with anything. Let me just throw this out there, throw it at the wall and see what sticks. And maybe ADOS will be happy. Maybe ADOS will be happy. Let me just throw this at the wall and see what sticks. Why would you come out with this after what just happened with the Supreme Court? This is doomed to fail. Let's continue. This part right here. At the same time, legacy admissions, long seen as a perk for white and wealthy at selective colleges, have come under fire in recent years following the Supreme Court's ruling against affirmative action. by banning affirmative action, but allowing legacy preferences, which favor the children of alumni and donors. Critics say the court left admissions even more lopsided against students of color. So one of the things California did do is they did outlaw legacy admissions, which I agree with that. I've said this over and over again. I don't think it's fair that you just automatically get in because your daddy went there or your mom went there or your granddad went there, and you're jumping over someone who actually may have had like the merits to get in. And I've seen it a number of times. About 40% of the students at Harvard University are legacies. Legs. So they did outlaw that. So if California outlawed legacy admissions, now they're going to turn around and they're going to implement priority admission at these universities for descendants of slavery. They know this is not going to pass. The Supreme Court can strike this down because of what they just ruled. So let me tell you something. The Gavin Newsom part right here. The proposal follows reparations efforts. See what they're doing? The proposal follows reparation efforts at the state level that have yielded mixed results. Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom signed a law in September to formally apologize for the state's legacy of racism and discrimination against Black residents. But state lawmakers blocked a bill that would have created an agency to administer reparation programs, and Newsom vetoed a proposal that would have helped Black families reclaim property that was seized unjustly by the government through eminent domain. So this is another example of the governor or any politician apologizing for something, but when it comes to the actions to right the wrong, the governor and the other politicians step in and make sure that that wrong is not rewritten. It's all talk and it's all smoke and mirrors. This is not reparations. Reparations is a debt that is owed. General Sherman promised 40 acres and a mule. You can do the math to figure out what that would be today. I think the best person to follow on this is Yvette Carnell and also Dr. Sandy Darity, because they did the research to tell you what it should be today. That's cash reparations. So they're trying to give you crumbs. They're trying to skirt around this so that they don't have to give you what you're owed. But other groups can get what they're owed. Japanese Americans that were a part of the internment camps got cash reparations, and so did their descendants. So this is not, we have to be careful, ladies and gentlemen. Do not let these politicians, this is why I tell you don't do this through the Democratic Party. These politicians are trying to now co-opt the word reparations, and they're trying to water it down just like they did the word progressive, and they're trying to make it be what they want it to be so they can say they did something for you. This is the danger about trying to do it through the Democratic Party. So don't let them do that. That's not reparations. But on that note, I want to remind you of something. Here's something that happened. You guys remember this guy? Remember this guy? His sister's an actress, a famous actress. This gentleman here, he pretended to be Black to get into med school. Listen to this, and I'm going to tell you how this is connected to California. Listen.
Now, the head of missions consultant at Interview SOS has a unique experience with this topic. An Indian American, he realized the only way that he would be accepted at med school would be to pass as Black. He chronicled his experiences in his book, Almost Black, the true story of how I got into medical school by pretending to be Black. VJ Chokol Ingham joins me now. So you were studying statistics at the University of Chicago, and you say to yourself, I don't stand a chance with my 3.1. What did you do?
Well, I shaved my head, I trimmed my eyelashes, and I decided to join the organization of Black students so I could apply to medical school as a Black man. I also used my middle name, Jojo. I subsequently interviewed at medical schools across the country.
Pause. I want everyone to look at this for a second. So this is, I think her name's Mindy Kaling. She's an actress. You may be familiar with her. I think she was on The Office. I think a lot of you know who I'm talking about. She was also in that video with Kamala Harris where she was like, let's cook Indian food. Mindy Kaling, this is her brother. Now, she can't help what her brother did. But this guy basically cosplayed being black to get into med school. And it worked. So he went to the extent of shaving his head. And first of all, I don't know, people must have been drunk or something. And maybe they had on some beer goggles, because I can look at both of these pictures and I can tell that this is not a black man. So whoever fell for this, I don't know what to tell you. Don't know what to tell you. But do you see what he did? Listen to it.
And managed to get waitlisted at Washington University and the University of Pennsylvania, then ranked the second and the third and fourth best medical schools in the country, and got into St. Louis University School of Medicine, despite the fact that my pretty pitiful 3.1 GPA was dramatically lower than their average of 3.7. Now, I wanted to mention a statistic you mentioned earlier in the program, which is that the majority of Harvard is now a minority. And I don't think that's true. I think that's very deceptive, because I think you're forgetting about the Pocahontas factor. And that is that there's a large number of people who are whiter than winter in Alaska who pose as minorities based on flimsy reasons. And as a result, it skews the statistics because they know that it can improve their chances of admission. So self-reporting of statistics that a minority, I don't think that's necessarily the best data to use.
So, VJ, what you're saying is that you didn't just check a box. You went full on Tootsie. And there are others out there who may not adopt the personification of a particular group, but they're checking the same box in the same way.
I'm an independent admissions consultant. I have so many clients who, they have an African-American great-great-grandfather, their great-great-grandmother was Hispanic or something like that. And for very flimsy reasons, they call themselves minority because they know it's going to improve their chances of admissions. So we cannot ignore the Pocahontas factor when we look at that statistic that 51% of people at Harvard are saying that they're.
Well, all right, well, listen,
So minority can mean different things, but Saul, thank you so much for saying this. He's trolling or something. Harvard is letting in black men with average grades ? When? Yeah, even with, and I will say this, even with affirmative action, you still can't get into Harvard with average grades. I worked in higher ed for over 10 years, guys. I worked at MIT, I worked at BU, I worked at Harvard briefly, and I can tell you, even with average grades and being African American, you're not getting into Harvard. You still have to meet some of the main requirements. Like, what the hell?
Because you are using the nickname, let's go there. You've said that what Lincoln did vis-a-vis slavery, Trump will do vis-a-vis affirmative action. Explain.
I believe that President Trump, by appointing conservative anti-affirmative action justices and by using the Justice Department to go after the colleges and universities, I believe that he will end affirmative action like Lincoln ended slavery. As you know, Bob Jones University many years ago lost its nonprofit status because of its racist policies. Similarly, when it comes to the issue of affirmative action, the colleges and universities have pleaded guilty as charged. They publicly endorsed racial discrimination in the form of affirmative action in the Fisher case. Therefore, the Trump Justice Department could use, with the Supreme Court, could effectively force the universities to end their racist affirmative action policies by forcing them to lose their federal funding. So, as I said, President Trump will end affirmative action like Lincoln ended slavery.
And I want to put on the screen a pie chart that shows the breakdown of this incoming class at Harvard. I want to ask you a question. 22.2% Asian American. How many Asians are too many Asians for the Harvard incoming class? Should there be any limit whatsoever? What if on the merits, if you go by GPA and SAT score, you could fill the entire class at Harvard with Asian Americans? Should they do so?
Pause. I want to point out something about this pie chart here. I think you guys might find interesting. This 14.6% African American, that includes, I want people to understand this, how they do this, okay? I don't want you to see that and assume that all of those, that slice of the pie for Harvard are Black Americans here in the United States. Because you see, what happens is at these universities, and I saw this through admissions, at these universities, when you have students that are also, their skin color is, Black, but let's say they're African, they're from Africa, or they're from Jamaica, or they're from, another country, or the UK. What happens is when they come to these colleges in the United States, they're still seen as Black, as African American. So I want to point that out because people will see that number and they're like, wow, I'm surprised. 14.6% Black Americans were admitted to Harvard that year. No. No. That's African American. That would also include those that are coming from abroad. So keep that in mind. What I noticed is at a lot of these schools like Harvard, like MIT, also Boston University, a lot of the quote unquote African American, or what the university would identify as African American students, a lot of those students are international students. This is what people have to understand. So when you look at this pie chart, it can be deceiving. That doesn't mean these are all Black Americans. So keep that in mind.
First of all, there is the multifactorial admissions process. There are 9 criteria, including grades, test scores, letters of recommendation, essays. So I'm not saying that grades and test scores should be the only consideration. The second thing is data can easily be manipulated. I'm a CFA charter holder, but I can assess that. But the simple point is that as an Asian American, it is.
1 second. I want to go back to something else on this pie chart and show you as well. Same thing with the 49.2% that says white. That also includes European international students. So everybody needs to keep this in mind. A lot of these colleges like Harvard, MIT, Boston University, there's a large number of international students that are at those schools. And it's like, you either have to attend those schools or you have to work at those colleges to see that. I worked with admissions on different programs, so I know firsthand. So keep that in mind, because the reality is, especially when it comes to those types of schools, when you're looking at test scores, and this is sad to say, and please don't take this the wrong way. When you're looking at test scores, especially for the more advanced programs, like the master's programs and the PhD programs, a lot of the American applicants, their scores are not where the faculty members really want them to be to enter those programs. So oftentimes what happens at those schools like Harvard and MIT, et cetera, is that you end up having a lot of international students that are at those schools because they have the higher test scores. They have higher math and science scores. This is just a fact. This is a fact. I've seen these numbers for years. So it's easy to look at this and assume that these are all American students, but that's not necessarily the case.
There is the multifactorial admissions process. There are 9 criteria, including grades, test scores, letters of recommendation, essays. So I'm not saying that grades and test scores should be the only consideration. The second thing is data can easily be manipulated. I'm a CFA charter holder, but I can assess that. But the simple point is that as an Asian American, it is harder to get into college or graduate school than any other racial category. In every place where the data is available, it is consistently harder for an Asian American to get in. I used the example earlier of medical school admissions, where it was 50% easier to get into medical school as an Asian American compared to an African American. So statistical data, there is no rationalization for racism. Affirmative action is a system of legalized racism.
So let's pause here for a second. What he leaves out of this conversation is that there are more applicants, there are more Asian applicants that are applying to those particular programs than there are Black applicants. So if you have 2,000 Asian Americans applying to a PhD program and you have 50 Black Americans applying to a PhD program, there's going to be a difference there. See, he leaves that out. I know that because I looked at the applications. The point that I want to make with this and the California situation, notice how he was just able to do that. Notice how he was just able to change his skin color, change his hair, and say that he's Black to get into the school. How is California? They're going to have to know, how are they going to put some type of mechanism in place to verify that the students that are applying are actually descendants of slavery? So they're going to have to verify that. Are they going to do that? Is it actually going to be for, I'm asking you guys for real, because I know how university system work. I don't think they're going to do all that. They got enough paperwork as it is. They don't want to do extra things. I'm telling you. And there's a lot of red tape that you have to get around. There's a lot of bureaucracy at these higher ed institutions. So are they going to sit down and take the time and verify, is this applicant a descendant of slavery? Or are they just going to see that they checked Black? Needless to say, what California is trying to do, this scam here that Gavin Newsom is trying to pass, is not reparations. But you can tell that the walls are closing in, because the only reason they're trying to even produce something is because of the backlash that Gavin Newsom and the state legislators received in California by not choosing to vote on that reparations bill. Will it be enough to move the needle? I don't know. I will reach back out to Camilla, who is a part of the California Reparations Task Force. She was on the show before. She's also been on RBN, to bring her back on the show to ask her how she feels about this. All right. Let's go to some of the comments here in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, hey, hey. Shout out to 100 Black Roke, says, hello, big homie. Black Rogue has been a member for 15 months. Thank you so much. Thank you for the super sticker, wanker tanker. SF said, yep, Mindy Kaling. That's right. That's her brother. Thank you, Peter. Newsom will say to go on Google next, like Adams. Or maybe you mean go on Google. Thank you, New York Varsity. A 3.1 as a statistics major at Chicago University? ? Dude, that's an Indian F. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to say anything, but yeah. Thank you, Dre. California Dems are trying to slide through some Temu version of reparations. Send that idea to the same place we sent Kamala. Tia, meanwhile, there are Black people who can't get into jobs or school because their names sound too Black. To hell with this guy. There you go. Thank you, Unemployed Scholar. He looks city, which is African origin Indians in India, but he identifies as Asian American. And looks can be deceiving. You can look one thing and be, something else. And thank you, Divad. Had a 7.0 quake in California, have a plan for disaster. Aye. Okay, let's get the comment on Rockfin. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. To make MCDS work, we must flip 23 more states to CBI for amendment states so we can jump right to solutions by doing it ourselves. Regarding California legislator, hey, politicians, you don't tell us what you're going to do for us. We tell you what we're going to do, what you're going to do for us. At least Newsom got rid of legacy admissions. Hey, Newsom education may be a right, but it is not owed. There you go. I'm telling you, they're trying to do anything to keep from giving you what you're supposed to have. Okay. All righty. I hope I'm doing okay on time. Thank you, Roger. Sab just got you a new subscriber. Say hi to Margaret. Hello, Margaret. Hello. Is it me you're looking for? Thank you, Cooper. Berkeley tests all applicants by seeing if a pencil can stand in their hair. old race test from apartheid South Africa. Yikes. Damn. Okay. Hit the like, fam. Hit the like. Thank you. We're going to move on to our next story. We got to talk about the crazy shit that's happening in France. Dun, dun, dun. If you are not aware, yes, the walls are closing in on France. It appears that right now, as we speak, France is collapsing. That's right. The French government is in an official collapse. And I don't really mean to laugh, but this is all on Emmanuel Macron. We're going to get started here and talk about this collapse that started just recently. And then we're going to backtrack and we're going to discuss where this all began. Don't forget, it was in July that Emmanuel Macron made the decision to hold a snap election to try to get things to move his way. Now, he thought by doing this, this would give the centrist party in France more power, but that backfired, fam. It backfired, and it actually gave the right more power. So there was this coalition of leftists that came together to push back against the right. That left coalition was able to win, but they did not get the majority in the House. That's a little bit of the back info so you can understand how they got here. And is France even going to have a prime minister? Let's get into that here.
In the end, it wasn't even close. Members of France's National Assembly had two choices: vote to bring down the government or abstain. Don't vote at all. Hitting 288 would mean the government collapses. In the end, they had 331 from the left and the right, a clear majority.
For the first time in more than 60 years, the country's government has been ousted.
So all of this has led to a couple of big things. One, France's prime minister resigned. But two, the president, Emmanuel Macron, is as defiant as ever, accusing his opponents of acting against the interests of the country and vowing to build a new government from the ground up.
Je nommerai dans les prochains jours un premier ministre.
Except what escalates all of this to crisis levels is that the country has to figure out how to avoid economic disaster. Because for years, France had already been driving towards a steep financial cliff. And despite reassurances from the president, the steering wheel to the car just popped off.
And this is actually, I think, one of the reasons Emmanuel Macron had decided to increase the retirement age. I started covering France last year when the protests were happening in France. People were protesting because they were like, hell no, you're not raising our retirement age. You know, we want our pension, we want our retirement. And so he decided to, I guess this is like an executive order. He decided to increase it by 2 years. Well, when something like that happens in France, the people hit the streets. It's very different than here in the US, right? Like, and I mean, the people, I mean, like all the damn people hit the streets. They were burning down buildings. They were just like, hell no, you are not going to make us work longer. And I get it. I totally get it. And I understand, right? So the French people have not been happy with President Macron. And I think when he made that decision, well, let's continue to increase the retirement age, it almost kind of seemed like that could have been his way to answer for the debt. Like France has a lot of debt and the economic issues there. But I don't think that that was going to fix the problem at all. Let's continue.
The vote to bring down France's government takes on a whole different meaning when you understand how much trouble France's economy is in right now.
Racked up debt. France is in huge debt.
Spiraling debt.
First, let's talk about the country's debt. 3.2 trillion euros and rising. For reference, that's more than double what EU regulations set as the debt cap for its members, 60% of GDP. And the comparison to Greece? For a brief time, France's borrowing costs actually exceeded those of Greece. And that economy has been scarred by crippling debt for years.
France is currently under a lot of pressure from the European Union because of its spending.
And this economic uncertainty translates into planning insecurity for business and for investors. And this is very bad for the economy.
To be clear, when your economy is being compared to the economy of Greece, you're in bad shape. And let's talk about GDP. Growth in France has been quite stagnant. If we look back to 5 years ago, there was the pandemic, And then there was the recovery. But ever since then, and especially in the last 2 or so years, France has consistently fallen short of the 2 to 3% growth most economists agree is where a country wants to be.
So let's talk about Macron here for a second, because Macron was a financier. So you would think that someone that worked in finance for all those years would actually know what they're doing when it comes to the economy of the country that they're trying to lead. No, it turns out no, he didn't.
The debt is simply too high and the deficit is too high. And in order to bring those down, bring the deficit down, France has to cut expenditure and also would need to increase taxes to some extent.
But here's the problem. In trying to solve this issue, the government made the debt problem worse.
Macron wants to spend $9.3 billion over the next 4 years to tackle poverty.
In Macron's first term, he was pushed by a sweeping protest movement to put billions of dollars of public money into people's pockets. Minimum wage went up, tax increases were pulled away.
Yeah, Macron has not been doing too well. We're going to fast forward a little bit here and we're going to get to what happened in July, because it's true. Like, this guy's a joke. He kind of reminds me as the Obama of France in a way. I think I'm going to start right about here. Yes. What happened in July?
Ultimately, make everything worse. Back in July, when Emmanuel Macron thought he could consolidate power by calling a snap.
The snap election.
The snap election.
Snap election.
He actually just shot himself in the foot.
Macron's centrist bloc came second. Not enough for his gamble to have paid off.
Marine Le Pen's far-right Rassemblement National, the National Rally Party, only got stronger, winning many more seats. To keep them at bay, the left, under the new banner of the Nouveau Front Populaire, scraped together an uneasy coalition, holding the most seats but no majority.
Pause. This is something I want to point out, and I want to make a comparison here. Okay. So Macron wanted to basically give the centrist party, let the centrist party have more power. But in doing that, that actually empowered and emboldened the right. Does that sound familiar? What just happened here in the United States? We had Kamala Harris run like this moderate / centrist, campaign, didn't have a working class agenda for the people, was trying to get people like, Liz Cheney along with her. And like, I'm going to go get some of those Republicans that don't want Donald Trump. Stupid strategy. Dumb strategy. Kamala Harris trying to embrace those that are Republicans, but supposedly may not want Donald Trump, not thinking about the fact that most people are going to vote their party in the end anyway. Instead of embracing the left, look at the left coalition that came together here in France, right? All these people came together, different parties, but came together and said, oh, hell to the no. We're going to get together and we're going to push back against the national rally. We're pushing back against the right. So Macron should have been trying to work with and embrace the left coalition, but he wanted to remain in the so-called center, and that only empowered the right. So when we compare it to what just happened here in the United States, Kamala Harris ran this, milquetoast, centrist, moderate campaign, was more willing to appeal to like these lukewarm Liz Cheney, whatever, neocon Republicans, instead of embracing the left, the progressives in this country, the people who had, this idea of a working class agenda. Instead of listening to people like a Bernie Sanders, instead of listening to people that were for the universal policies, instead of embracing those people, she was willing to even lose. And what happened to Macron? He lost. Like, his party came in second. So this is a lesson that everybody needs to see. If you are quote unquote in the center or whatever, trying to empower and build up that center, all you end up doing in the end is empowering the right. That's what happened in France, and that's what happened here. So look how Donald Trump won. He won the popular vote and he won every swing state. If Kamala Harris would have had some type of working class coalition, and there's a whole bunch of other things, I don't think she was the right candidate anyway. But what I'm saying is they weren't running on a populist message. They weren't running on a working class agenda. They were willing to say, I got an endorsement from Dick Cheney. I'm approved by Goldman Sachs. They were willing to do that and lose instead of trying to embrace the left coalition here.
And stuck in the middle, Macron's centrists. And this is where Macron had a problem. He needed to appoint a prime minister who, in the French system, is basically in charge of everything domestic, including budgets. The president handles defense and foreign affairs. Michel Barnier was the eventual choice, tasked with somehow finding a path forward for the French economy. And his appointment, though not most people's first choice, given how fractured Parliament was, largely went through because he was seen as capable.
I don't think there was ever an issue with Barnier himself. He was quite a respected figure by many political parties. Don't forget that he was hailed for being an excellent chief negotiator for the Brexit agreement.
But that all ended when the rubber really hit the road. Budget time. Barnier's proposed budget was supposed to recoup some 60 billion euros through taxes, big taxes on big business, but also by cutting public spending on things like pensions, very precious things like pensions. The standoff.
And what he did mention here, and guess who owned those pensions? BlackRock.
Over this budget would go on for weeks. Austerity cuts in France tend to be a tough pill to swallow. So Barnier went nuclear. He used an article of the Constitution to force through a piece of finance legislation without a vote in Parliament. He just kind of skipped over everyone and said, I'm just going to do what I need to do. And that ticked everyone off. Well, not quite everyone. Macron's closest allies were still in his camp, but the left and the right joined forces to say, this government cannot stand.
So then you have the left and the right, which came together that said, we are going to do a no confidence vote that this government has to go. They got to go. So do you see what Macron has caused to happen? And by the way, they can't have, if I remember correctly, I don't think that Macron can have another election until July. So what are they supposed to do? Because you need to have a prime minister. I blame this all on him.
Really, at the core of the issue, this power play, this political power play, this depolarization of not only of the French society, but in particular in the French parliament. And this power play leads to great uncertainty for the economy.
All of this leaves Emmanuel Macron with a very difficult next move. He can't call an election because the Constitution forbids him from doing so, having just called one in July. Next July, he can call an election. So that's a big gap where France has no way of passing a budget to get its economy back on track.
Macron is clearly under pressure. The no confidence vote was primarily a no confidence vote against him. He has to come up with a new prime minister, with a new government. Constitutionally, that is his task to appoint a new government, and he should do so quickly.
If Macron doesn't choose someone that at least, has some sort of majority approval, well, then the MPs can just, again, organize a no confidence vote, and then we're back to square one.
This process of choosing a new PM, Macron says it will only take days, and he was pretty defiant of those suggesting he should resign.
Et enfin, le mandat que vous m'avez démocratiquement confié est un mandat de 5 ans. Et je l'exercerai pleinement.
Yeah, this guy is very full of himself. He's very pompous. And I don't know if anyone in the chat, if you're in France or you're from France and you've had your issues with Macron or whatever, do you think that he should? I think President Macron should resign. I really do. I said that back during the protest. I was like, this guy's got to go. President Macron needs to step down.
Jusqu'à son terme.
So this is where we're at. France is on the clock. If it can't pass a budget by December 20th, emergency legislation would just roll over the 2024 budget into next year. But there's a consensus out there that you can't fix France's current day problems with yesterday's solutions. And until they figure that out, we have Macron once again trying to pick up the shattered pieces of a failed election gamble and a French economy that is in really rough shape.
Yeah, you got to go, Macron. You got to go. Someone was just, Marie, we hate him. We want him out. Yeah, and that's what I noticed during the protests. I was like, dude, is that everyone in France like marching right now? Like, it's obvious the people are not happy with President Macron. And this is something, the Duran, I don't know if everyone follows the Duran, but they were talking about this as well. I want to play a little bit of this. Christophe and Alex, listen to it.
All right, Alexander, let's talk about the collapse of Barnier's administration. Macron's prime minister and Macron's administration, really. That's what we're talking about here. The no confidence vote, as expected, the right and the left united, and they collapsed Barnier's government. And this is no surprise. But the question is, what happens now? Macron has said that he will not resign. He can't call elections, at least not right away. So he can't call snap elections and run again. The only way you can get elections is if he does resign. Le Pen is calling on him to resign. Mélenchon is calling on him to resign. And the reason that they state that he needs to resign is that even if he does put together another weak government under a new prime minister, that government is going to collapse in 3 months. So Macron really cannot govern. And I believe he is going to be in office until 2027, I believe. So what does France do? You have 2 years now with a president that can't put together a government, refuses to resign and step down, at least at the time of the recording of this video. He's refusing to step down. Things may change. But you have a country that cannot be governed. What happens now?
Well, France, the French,
and we called this, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
We called this, by the way.
Yeah.
We said that Macron is setting up a very weak government that is not going to make this. I remember we did many videos talking about Macron and how he maneuvered his way into power after the last elections and how this was going to burn him.
Alex and Alex. I keep saying Alex and Christophe. They're both Alex, but this is Alex Christophe.
And that's what we have now.
Absolutely. I mean, France is paying the price of Emmanuel Macron, an absolutely disastrous president whose vanity and incompetence, which it is, I mean, he's deeply incompetent. He's and lack of political understanding and lack of empathy with the French people and understanding of their traditions and their culture, or even liking of it, has brought France to a deep point of crisis. I mean, what I think you're starting to see, and I mean, I don't want to be absolutely, definite about this, but I think you're beginning to see the collapse in France of the globalist project, which, by the way, was partly, conceived and brought forth and imposed upon all of us by various French intellectuals. This isn't just something that is completely alien to France. I mean, there's been elements of French society in Paris and, whatever, the bureaucracies that have been working towards, the sort of globalist, Europeanist system for a very, very long time. But I think it's finally, as I said, reaching its point of final collapse. Now,
Yeah, and you guys can watch the rest of that on the Duran's channel. I don't want to play the whole thing, but that's the Duran, the collapse of Macron's France. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it, you guys, but it's just like last year for a while, like I was covering France. It was like France like every other day because people were like out in the streets like over and over again. And then they stormed Black Rock in France. I was like, holy smokes. Like the people obviously have had enough. But you have to understand again, Macron is another one that has been accepted by the elites, by the status quo. I hate to say it again, but I do refer to him as the French Obama in a sense. Like, I mean, you have a financier who is president of the country and the country is having financial problems. And that tells me that you are using your financial skills to enrich yourself. That's kind of how I see it. Will he resign? We'll have to wait and see. Let's go to some of the comments here in the chat. C. Shada says it's probably because Candace said his wife is a man. Oh my God. I don't know. TD said Macron is a banker first and foremost. There you go. Marie says the debt was his making. Increase taxes on the working and subsidize the rich. Same recipe as everywhere. There you go. Marie also says his popularity is 17%. That's bad. Olga said they're both Alex at the Duran, Alexander and Alex. That's right. And thank you, Jay. Please have the Duran on your show to talk about geopolitics. You won't be disappointed. I would love to. If you know how to contact them, let me know. I don't have contact information for them, but I would love to have them on. I've seen Garland Nixon on their show a couple of times as well. And I'll take the comment on Rockfin as well. Thank you. Thanks, Roger. Interesting what is happening in France, but until every country becomes Switzerland and allows their citizens to place their own amendments on a national ballot to ratify their own amendments into the national constitution, then the people will continue to have the illusion of power. If France did, then Macron wouldn't be an issue, but nullified. And don't get it twisted, guys, because France still has, a lot better benefits than we do in the U.S. Thank you for the Rumble rant. Joanna kick booty. Remember, Sabs, the establishment Dems choose to lose with Hillary rather than win with Bernie back in 2016 as well. That's right. That's right. Well said. Okie dokie. We are moving on to the next story. I think I'm doing really good on time. I told you guys we have 7 stories tonight, but I think I'm flying right through. Hells to the yeah. Okie dokie. A while back, I covered the Sonia Massie story. This was the woman who was holding a pot of water, and the police officers were in her home, and the police officer apparently jumped to ridiculous conclusions and thought that she was going to do something to him with that pot of water. He pulled out the gun after she said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," and he shot her in the head. At that point, we've gone through this before on the show, but she had nothing in her hand. Her hands were up in the air, and he shot her after her hands were up in the air. There has now been an update about that particular officer that I think you do want to hear. But first, let's go back to what happened that day, not just that night. There's a video here I want to play of what happened with Sonia Massie earlier that day with the police and what her mom said. Let's get into that.
Body cam footage in the Sonia Massie case, which shows the Illinois mother interacting with police just hours before he shot in her home. Trevor Aldis here with the story. Good morning, Trevor.
Good morning, George. So we've, of course, seen that disturbing body camera footage where she was shot to death in her own kitchen by a now former police officer. But this is new footage from the day before in which her mother called 911 saying Sonia was having a mental health episode. And even then, her mother begged them not to hurt her daughter.
How you doing, ma'am? What's your name?
This morning, newly released footage showing Sonia Massie 16 hours before she was fatally shot on July 6th at her home outside Springfield, Illinois.
I don't know what to do.
In this new body cam video obtained by our ABC affiliate WICS, Massey is seen interacting with police, explaining she was worried about her children.
I don't know where they at. I think they hurt mommy.
No, they're at their dad's house. They're worried about you too. Everybody just wants you to be okay. That's all it is.
Over the course of the roughly 45-minute video, Massey is sitting in her car, upset over her family, as well as the lights and water being turned off at her home.
Now, notice the difference between the way those officers interacted with her and the officer that took her life later on that evening. So her mother, I guess, basically confirmed that there was some type of mental health issue with Sonia Massie, which I kind of assumed when we first covered that story. And to that point, I've said this over and over again, in those types of situations, I do think that the police should not be the ones to handle any type of mental health situation. They don't know what they're doing, but that also doesn't give them an excuse to shoot someone when they have their hands up in the air either. It was very clear to me watching that video and watching this one, Sonia Massie wasn't going to hurt anyone. And no, now that we see this other bit of footage here, I think this is also important. She was interacting with officers earlier that day and they treated her, a lot better than the other officer did. They didn't see her as a threat. And apparently they knew even then, because they had already spoke to the mother, that the mother said that she had a mental health episode. So that tells me that the police department already knew that she had mental health issues. So that is why I do not understand why that evening when she made the call, why wasn't there someone else, a professional, someone who was trained, whether it's a mental health professional that knows how to deal with those types of situations? Why weren't they also sent there? I know she called the police because she said she thought someone was outside her house, but they're also in that type of situation. You already have the information now. So why wasn't there another person that was sent with them that was a mental health professional to help with that situation?
I got home, I ain't got no hot water, I ain't got no lights, I had to throw away all the food.
You calling today to get that fixed, you said?
They got my phone.
At one point, she confirmed she'd been taking her medicine when asked about it by officers.
When's the last time you took your medicine? It's written down last night.
On July 5th, Massey's mother, Donna, called 911, saying Sonia was having a mental health episode, her mother pleading with the operator not to hurt her daughter.
So you guys hear that, right?
She's been mentally having a mental breakdown. She thinks everybody's after her.
Hours later, at 12:49 a.m. on July 6th, Sonia called 911 herself to report a disturbance.
It sounds like somebody was banging on the side of my house. I don't know. Okay, y'all come and see.
30-year-old Sean Grayson and his partner responded to the call. The situation quickly escalating when Sonia asked to take a boiling pot of water off the stove.
Where you going?
Away from your hot steaming water.
Away from my hot steaming water?
Yeah.
Oh, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus.
And it was that set him off when she said, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus, when she had the pot of water on the stove. Now, again, she's all the way over here in the kitchen with the pot. He is in the living room. You have a gun. She doesn't. What was she going to do to him? And we're not going to show, obviously, the shooting on here, but.
You better not. I swear to God, I'll shoot you right in your face.
So you see what happens there? So that apparently provoked him. You better not. He said that he would shoot her in her face, and he immediately points the gun at her. Again, I can't show more of it than this. But what you see that happens after this is that she puts her hands up in the air like this, and she's about to crouch down, and he shot her in the head. So what was she going to do to you? This officer already had issues. He already had issues prior to that particular incident. Now, why am I bringing this up? There's new information about that officer, but I also want to show you what happened to the Illinois County Sheriff. He ended up leaving. He retired after this case. If this doesn't tell you something, listen to this, and then you're going to wait till you hear what I tell you just happened to the sheriff recently.
Now to the latest on the fatal police shooting of Sonia Massie. The Illinois County Sheriff, who has faced mounting criticism, is retiring. DeMarco Morgan is here with the latest details. Good morning to you, DeMarco.
Good morning to you guys. Well, embattled Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell says he's retiring at the end of the month. The announcement comes after the now former deputy he helped hire, Sean Grayson, shot and killed Massie at her home back on July 6th after she called 911 for help. The sheriff saying, quote, "I will not risk the community that I swore to protect." He went on to say the tragic death of Sonia Massie has been a heartbreaking event for our community. The one person truly responsible for this act is in jail, and I truly believe justice will be served
through the legal process. So this is the Sangamon County Sheriff. His name is Jack Campbell, and he said the one person who is truly responsible for this act is in jail. That was Officer Grayson at that point in time. And then he retired. So even the county sheriff was able to say, okay, no, this was not right. And then he retired. He peaced out. He retired. Oh, I don't want to deal with that. I'm out. Now's a good time for me to retire. I'm out. So I wanted people to see that so that you can see, just a reminder, that the county sheriff said the one person who is truly responsible for this act is in jail. And I truly believe that justice will be served
through the legal process. Campbell also says he has even had threats to his own life related to the case. Sheriff Campbell received mounting pressure to step down after the disturbing body cam video of former Deputy Grayson.
And we're not going to show the video again, obviously, but now there is new information about that particular officer. Hey, you're not going to like this, but you need to hear it.
The former Sangamon County deputy charged with the murder of Sonia Massie is set to be released from jail this Friday.
An appellate court ruling last week that Sean Grayson can await trial outside of custody.
Terrence Lee is here with what this means moving forward.
Let's go back again, just in case you missed it.
The former Sangamon County deputy charged with the murder of Sonia Massie is set to be released from jail this Friday.
An appellate court ruling last week that Sean Grayson can await trial outside of custody.
Terrence Lee is here with what this means moving.
Usually when that's happened, that's because they don't believe that you are going to be a threat or a danger to society. Now, this guy already had multiple issues as an officer before the incident with Sonia Massie. Then he goes on and he kills Sonia Massie, and now they are releasing him. He is released now. They released him. They put this guy back out on the street. Oh, you don't have to stay in jail. You're not a danger. We're going to go ahead and release you, and you can just wait for trial.
Forward.
Donna's got this decision is sparking a lot of legal and political scrutiny right now. The Court of Appeals has reversed the decision to keep Grayson locked up before trial, saying there wasn't enough evidence he posed a serious threat to the community. They also said he should be evaluated as a private citizen, not as a former law enforcement officer.
They said it wasn't enough evidence that showed that he was a threat to the community. This man, as a police officer who's supposed to serve and protect, he pulled out his weapon and he shot a woman in the head because of the words that she said. Sonia Massie didn't have a gun. Sonia Massie, even at that point, her hands went up like this. She had a pot on the stove. She said, do you mind if I get the pot of water that's on the stove? Because there was a pot of water that obviously there was boiling on the stove. Do you mind if I go ahead and take this off the stove? So you react by shooting her in the head. And he's not a threat. Not the first incident, by the way. They've had numerous issues with this particular police officer, but he's not a threat.
Grayson is accused of shooting and killing Sonia Massie after she called 911 about a possible prowler in July. In body cam footage, Grayson talked to Massie in her living room, and when she got up to move a pot of hot water, she said,
yeah, and you can see here again. So even again, at this point, as she is crouching down, what is she going to do to you? You know, so it's just, with this particular incident here, there's no way around it. If you're a police officer and you're threatened, you feel your life is threatened because someone said words to you, you need to get another job. I know teachers that can take on more than that, okay? I know teachers that have had desks thrown at them, teachers that get cursed at, teachers that basically have to be more than a teacher and also be a babysitter and a counselor and everything else that goes along with it. And they can handle that. But you can't handle someone saying what she said to you and your response was to shoot her in the head. You're in the wrong profession. But I believe this guy is an asshole. I know. I get it. Sherry says he had no right to be in her home, but she let them come in. And this is another thing I will say to you guys, because we walked through the longer video back when it happened. The police actually don't have the right to come into your home without a warrant. Now, this is what they'll do. They'll show up and knock on the door and they'll say, hey, can we come inside? You can say no. And please share that with as many people as possible. I don't think a lot of people know that. Just because they ask to come in, if they don't have a warrant, you can say no. But regardless of that, I still don't want you to feel like this is her fault, because it's not her fault. Sonia Massie would still be alive today. Remember, there were 2 police officers. One decided that he was going to shoot her in the head. The other officer didn't see her as a threat. And if it wasn't for the other officer being with him, we wouldn't even have body cam footage. Grayson's body cam wasn't on. When he goes over to her after he shot her in the head, by the way, he turned it off at one point and then turns it back on. So had the other officer not even been there, crazy times, man. Crazy, crazy times. Let's get that Rumble rant, Eric. Thank you for the Rumble rant, L. Corey. I have always felt that your show moves at a good pace. Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. Thank you. All right, and let's go to some of the comments over here as well. Ravina said, I really wish she wouldn't have let them in. Yeah. Sherry said he treated her like she was the prowler. Yeah, it was weird. Like when they came into her apartment, like this, the questions that he was asking as if like she didn't live there. Uzi, Sabby, you are speaking facts. I'm a teacher and I deal with way more threats than some of these LEOs. Yeah, I've seen it, man. And Tia, thank you. She didn't let them in, Sabby. He stepped in after she turned her back. I think you might be right about that. I have to go back and check that video, but I don't know, guys. I don't know how I feel about this one. I really don't know how I feel about this. The fact that they let him out and they said he's not a threat, I don't know if this trial is going to go in her favor. Okay. All right, quick announcement, and we're going on to the next story. Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you. Thank you so much. We are doing a mutual aid event. Our last one for this year is December 15th. We're donating gifts to kids in Roxbury, and you guys have really come through. Thank you so much. That'll be Sunday, December 15th at 12 p.m. Eastern. This is an invite-only event, so we are giving gifts to 50 kids in need. Their families already know, so just saying, this event, invite only. But to 50 kids that attend Orchard Park School in Roxbury. That is going to be at the Brucey Bowling Building, 2300 Washington Street, Roxbury. And again, it says it here that we are donating gifts to 50 children for the holidays. We will also serve a catered lunch for their families. And I said, please help donate what you can. Thank you guys so much. So far, we've raised $2,180. I mean, you guys have really come through. I really do appreciate that. I know that Kate reached out to me recently. They've already started doing like the shopping for the gifts and stuff like that. So I already ordered like the catering for the families. So we're super excited. If you still do want to donate, thank you there. Eric put the link there in the chat. You can do so. We use Spot Fund because GoFundMe screwed over the gray zone and they couldn't get their money in time. So we don't rock with GoFundMe no more. We use Spot Fund over here. But thank you guys. I really appreciate it. I am so ready to have that event. I've been waiting for a while. I've been waiting, so I'm excited. Eric, we can already go to Tight VNC Part 2 when you're ready. And I'll get the comment on Rockfin. Thank you. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Sab, he told her to take the pot off the stove so not to cause a fire hazard. Right. You're right. I forgot about that. She didn't even say, I refute you in the name of, oh, what happened? Okay, that was weird. Let me bring that back up. What happened there? Okay, there we go. Sorry. Sab, he told her to take the pot off the stove so not to cause a fire hazard. She didn't even say, I refute you in the name of Jesus to him, but responding to the hot pot. Ah, that is interesting there, Roger. That's interesting. Regardless what was said, there was no reason for him to kill her. So that's something that we got to remember. Okay. We have an interesting story. This one broke today. So if you're an Al Sharpton fan, you may not like this segment, but we got to cover this story. Okay. We got to talk about this. Yes. It's been about a week. Since I told you about this particular story here, where MSNBC said they were unaware that Kamala Harris's campaign donated $500,000 to Al Sharpton's nonprofit before the friendly interview. So we covered that story on the show. I told you how he got money from Kamala, and that was prior to the interview. He did not disclose that information with MSNBC. There are a number of reporters that spoke to people at MSNBC, and they said that no, they did not know about it, but also they don't agree with what he did. And they also said it goes against what we're about. I remember that quote and I was like, okay, whatever. But obviously MSNBC was not happy with Al Sharpton doing that. I know a lot of you guys said that's not cool. I said it's not cool because the thing is, obviously you're going to give her preferential treatment because she gave you some moolah. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the walls are closing in. Now, the Black church has built a coalition around this particular story, and now they are coming after Al Sharpton. Reverend Al Sharpton. Don't forget, he's a Rev. Don't forget about the Rev part. They have turned against Al Sharpton, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, they have. Check this out. Church turns on MSNBC host Al Sharpton over $500,000 in payments from Harris's campaign. You know, if you're a reverend, hold up. If you're a reverend and the church turns against the Black church is going against you, you know you done messed up, right? You know you done messed up. So it goes on to say here, there's Al, there he is. There's Al Sharpton. There's the informant. Don't forget, Al Sharpton was also an informant. Marvin said Al grabbed the paper, Sharpton. Here it is. The walls are closing in. Uh-oh. A Black church group has called on MSNBC to suspend one of its lead anchors over reports that he received $500,000 in undisclosed donations from Kamala Harris's campaign. So the Black church is not only upset with Al Sharpton, they are asking or demanding MSNBC to suspend Al Sharpton. The Black church said, we coming for that job. You can't. Oh my God. Host Al Sharpton interviewed Ms. Harris twice in October on his show Politics Nation in the lead up to Election Day. FEC filings later revealed her campaign had made 2 donations to $250,000 each to the presenter's nonprofit National Action Network, with the network admitting last week that it was unaware of the payments. The National Black Church Initiative. Actually, we're going to make this a little bit bigger. And we'll go back up. Yeah. The National Black Church Initiative, which represents 150,000 Black churches across the country, has said that the payment to Mr. Sharpton's group puts a moral stain on the integrity of the Black church. Now, let me just break this down for people. This is one of those moments when I was growing up, when I was a kid. You know, it's one thing if your parents tell you that they're mad at you. It's another thing if they tell you that they're disappointed with you. I could handle it better if my parents said that they were mad. If my parents told me that they were disappointed, that was a whole other thing, you know? Yeah, come back from that and we can talk about that at another time, but if you lose your parents' trust, you have to work to earn it back. So the Black church here is saying that it's a moral stain. So that kind of reminds me of that disappointment part, right? It's one thing to say, oh, this is bad. It's another thing to say it's a moral stain. You are a stain on the integrity of the Black church. As well as being a television host, Mr. Sharpton is a Baptist minister and a civil rights activist. The group, which claims to represent 27.7 million churchgoers across the country, said it was very concerned by the growing scandal and urged MSNBC to launch an investigation. It also called for Reverend Sharpton's suspension until the investigation is complete. So where others have chosen to remain silent, the Black church is choosing not to about this particular issue. They shouldn't even have to come in and tell MSNBC what is the moral thing to do. Yeah, he should be suspended for that. Something should be done. There should be some type of repercussions. But when the Black church steps in and they bond together as a unit, Black churches all across the country, it's game over, fam. And if you ever went to a Black church, you ever grew up in a Black church, you know this. When all these Black churches come together as a coalition, that is game over, fam. So they are letting Al Sharpton know, just because you're Black and just because you are a reverend, that doesn't mean that we're not going to push back against you when you do wrong. Significant ethics concerns. Reverend Anthony Evans, the church group's president, told the Washington Free Beacon that Mr. Sharpton was loved and admired by many in our coalition, but added that does not take away from the fact that he is facing significant moral and journalism ethics concerns regarding this payment or donation to National Action Network. Now, when it comes to the journalism ethics concerns, this is something that MSNBC should have handled anyway. The Black church shouldn't have to come and tell you that this is an ethics issue for journalism. And MSNBC knows that. But a lot of these people are not real journalists. They're commentators. They read a teleprompter. A lot of them are not actual, real investigative journalists, right? What did Rachel Maddow say? What did Rachel Maddow and Tucker Carlson argue? They said they're infotainment. Here we go. In addition, Reverend Sharpton is a minister of the gospel. This payment does not look good for a man supposed to represent integrity. Mr. Sharpton is a vocal Democrat supporter who spoke at the party's national convention in August. But one of the presenter MSNBC colleagues told Fox News that the six-figure transaction his group received from Harris' campaign is a bridge too far. Oh, Al, you burning the bridge. You have burned the bridge. Oh, no, 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 no. Atoli says, joy cometh in the morning. Oh, no. It's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. Oh, boy. The 250,000 donations to National Action Network, which Mr. Sharpton founded in 1991, were made on September 5th and October 1st, shortly before MSNBC aired the presenter's interviews with Ms. Harris on October 3rd and October 20th. Mr. Sharpton has a history of financial troubles. Here we go. Having pleaded guilty in 1993 to not filing his 1986 tax return in exchange for having 2 felony charges dropped. Everybody see this, right? In 2008, reports claimed the television host owed nearly $1.5 million in back taxes. Meanwhile, the New York Times reported in 2014 that records showed more than $4.5 million in current state and federal tax liens against him and his for-profit businesses. Mr. Sharpton told the outlet the outstanding balance was much lower than records showed. It comes as MSNBC has been hit by a double header of scandals over payments and political bias after it emerged that Rachel Maddow, one of its lead presenters, had renewed her contract for $25 million a year. By the way, it was $30 million. You know, they had to give her a little bit of a pay cut because those ratings dropped. So that's what that was all about. The network's future remains uncertain after its parent company, Comcast, recently revealed plans to spin off the channel. Elon Musk, who labeled the network utter scum on earth after it spliced together footage of a Nazi rally and a Trump campaign event, floated the possibility of buying it. How much does it cost? He asked, in response to a post about the network's potential sale. MSNBC was approached for a comment. So the Black church has come together to let Al Sharpton know that they feel he should be suspended from MSNBC because he took that money from Kamala Harris's campaign, especially prior to that interview, but he did not disclose that information. And I told you sometimes these things can come back to bite you in the ass. He's a reverend. He's not just a commentator on MSNBC and someone who is an actor, who used to be like a civil rights activist. He's also a reverend. And when you have that title, especially in the Black church, that's serious. People take that seriously. So we're going to have to sit back and wait and see if MSNBC is going to be moved on this. But here's the thing. You guys got to understand that MSNBC obviously supports the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party always comes through the Black church come election time, whether it's presidential election, whether it's congressional races, they come through the Black church. So what the Black church could do is they could say, if you do not hold Al Sharpton accountable for what he did, then the Democratic Party no longer runs through the Black church. Now, I don't think it should run through the Black church any damn way. I think people need to leave the Democratic Party. Leave both of these leave the two-party system, leave all of it. Because they're both corporate. Both of these parties are corporate and they serve corporate interests. They're not really trying to help you. But that is another demand that they could make. So Al Sharpton is now not only being scrutinized by, commentators like me, but also now by the Black church. And that does mean something for someone like him. Swing low, Sweet chariot coming forth to carry me home. I'm being silly now. But what? He's an informant. Al Sharpton was an informant. Al Sharpton, I remember the story about the taxes, but I remember they were coming after him for child support. They said, you need to take care of your kid. I remember all this stuff. And personally, I liked old school Al. I liked Al back when he had the perm. He was a little bit, heftier. I thought he was a little bit more raw back then. But this Al, nah. He's status quo. Nico says, oh boy, all these hymns. Oh my God. We'll see what happens, but I got to tell you again, that's not good for him. Well. Let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Peter, for the super chat. The church is mad he didn't kick up the usual 10%. Shout out to my comrade Charlie Mack for gifting 5 Sabby memberships. Charlie is a part of the Boston chapter, the Boston Mutual Aid chapter here. So Charlie helps me with all this jazz for mutual aid. Thank you. I know myself. Wow, disappointing. Cue the tape of Al telling the black church, don't ask no questions. Truly a menace to society while drinking juice in the hood. Speaking of menace to society, remember that the speech, the guy from Menace to Society, the detective? Remember what he told Trey, the character Trey, when they were in the interrogation room? He said, first you said that you went into the store. Then you said, and he goes, well, I was in the store and then I was come back and then he said, no. Now, you done fucked up, right? Yes, sir. No, sir. No, sir. Yes, sir. No. I didn't mean to. You done fucked up. First, you said you were in the store. I can't do it as well as him, but you have to watch the movie because it's hilarious. That part is funny. It's the way that he talks. Yes. Bill Duke. Thank you, Golden Silence. That is Bill Duke. It's the way that he talks during that moment. He talks so slow, but he gets his point across and he's like, they know you done fucked up, right? You messed up. Yes. Saul said, you said you bought the bottle of beer first. We're going to have to, oh my God. I wish we could show clips on YouTube because I want to show that scene on YouTube so damn bad. Like, I love that scene from Menace to Society when he said that. Love it. You done fucked up, right? Oh man. Okay. I think we got all the comments. We're going to go into the next story. Oh, let me make sure I got all of them. Oh, I didn't. Thank you, Charlie. Up at Kate's house now. We got you on the TV, killing it tonight, Sabrina. Happy weekend, everyone. Much love. Oh, thank you, Charlie. And thank you, Tristan. Simple resolution, disclosure. Say it. We've been paid for this interview. Disclose that the questions are pre-approved. Oh, yeah, I'm dreaming about. Yeah, like JB did that. He disclosed that with people. He said, listen, I'm working with the Jill Stein campaign, full disclosure. And thank you, Phenomenal Mysticism. The Black church never really had moral credibility to begin with, even before this Al Sharpton situation. So I don't know what moral integrity they claim is being stained. This is a good point, too. Thank you so much. Okay. Smash the like if you haven't had a chance to do so. We're going to the next story. Thank you so much. And I think we're doing pretty good on time. This is another story. This one's relatively short as well, but I think you need to hear it. So before Elon Musk bought Twitter and changed it to X and all that jazz, Twitter had decided to label certain accounts as Russia affiliated media or Iran affiliated media. All of a sudden, we woke up one day and there were a number of accounts on Twitter that had this label like attached to their accounts, right? The problem with that is that it obviously suppressed those accounts. But on top of that, The other thing that became an issue is that it seems like people were less likely to click on those accounts because they'd see the label that said Russian affiliated media. And obviously that would make people think, oh, I shouldn't trust what that account says, right? Which is interesting because US corporate media lies all the time, but no one says, oh, I shouldn't trust what that account says. So that type of thing. George Galloway was one of those people. George Galloway had a label that was slapped on his account that said Russian affiliated media. Now, what was interesting about his particular case is that George Galloway wasn't working for RT. The people who had the label Russian affiliated media, they had worked for RT or they were some type of a correspondent for RT, even a guest correspondent. They were the ones that had that label. So even Fiorella Isabel's account at one point was slapped that label. I don't think those labels should have happened, period. But I'm trying to explain what happened here. People who worked for Iran media. So like if you worked for Press TV or whatever, then you got the label Iran State Media, etc. I thought that was ridiculous. But that was another way of Twitter to censor and suppress certain people and certain information. Now, George Galloway had that label of Russian affiliated media, and he immediately questioned it on Twitter and said, why do I have this label on my account? I don't work for RT. What is going on? You guys need to remove this label. And at that time, Elon Musk had bought Twitter. So he was tagging Elon Musk and he was like, this label needs to be removed from my account. Like, very simple, right? So to make a long story short, George Galloway decided to sue Twitter. I don't know if a lot of people know about this. It was a defamation lawsuit. Let's go back to this part when he was talking about it here.
I'm meeting him tomorrow, or his top legal representative tomorrow in Dublin. So he might need your subscription. But I'm going to raise, of course, the ongoing suppression, censorship, algorithmic strangling, and all the other tactics that are still being used on Twitter, on X, when he said he was bringing it back to being the public square. He said that he was ending censorship. He said he was ending collaboration with state agencies. And he has not. Of course, the Elon Musk iteration of Twitter is better than the previous one. The CIA were practically openly running Twitter before he bought it. Of course, it's better than it was, but it is a very long way short of what he promised it would be.
So this was during the time when Elon Musk did make the promise that he was going to be, free speech person and you can say whatever you want, on Twitter and all that kind of jazz. And obviously, of course, that wasn't the case. And I think some of us tried to warn people that, once he gets pressure from like advertisers and other government officials, that's going to change too as well, right? Just like it did with Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg. But I think, George was one of those people that did believe that Elon was going to move in that direction and there wasn't going to be as much censorship on Twitter once he bought it. And I will say there were some improvements, but then there's also still a lot of suppression, especially like Israel, Gaza, it's heavily suppressed. Zionist accounts are heavily boosted. Pro-Palestinian accounts are heavily suppressed, especially if it's a Palestinian organization account, heavily suppressed. So you guys get the picture. People asking to end the war in Ukraine, unless you're already a public figure, you're going to be heavily suppressed as well. So there are a number of things that have happened there. George Galloway, though, he hosts this show, Moats TV. He was also running for office. Everybody remembers he ran for office in it was like a short term, a special election. We would call it a special election here in the US. And he won. So imagine thinking about that. If you have that label on your account and that's not true, you don't work for RT, then that also could hurt your election chances and all that stuff as well. That being said, George Galloway, supports ending the war in Ukraine and thinks it's ridiculous, etc. But he was able to file a defamation lawsuit because of this. Like, he kept asking Elon, remove this label from my name. So there was some disappointment that he's expressing here.
And you're right to highlight that. I myself found myself today victim to a tactic I literally had never seen before. One of my friends, Uncle Hoz, put out a clip of me talking about this Motorola business. It was an enormous hit. It was almost 300,000 views in a matter of hours. And then it got a stamp put on it, a stamp which I have never seen before by Twitter. And the stamp said, this material is taken out of context. What does that mean?
Yeah, that was another thing. They still do the stamps, but some people say they're even more suppressed now. And these things weren't explained to people. That was another thing. Like we literally woke up one day and all of a sudden there were these labels on people's accounts. We're like, what the hell is this? And it could have been someone who maybe they were a guest correspondent for RT for a month or something, or someone who was a guest host for Press TV or something. And all of a sudden, they had these labels on their accounts. Now, again, I'm pretty sure that came from the US government, put that pressure on Twitter and tell them, okay, we need to label these accounts. So that did hurt people who are investigative journalists. Yeah, that did hurt their accounts. So George Galloway filed that lawsuit, and I have an update about that. It says that Elon Musk X is ordered to pay George Galloway after labeling his account Russia state affiliated. So this is good news for George. That he got his win here, because I gotta say, he didn't give up. Maybe other people should have done this as well, but this is good news for him. It says that Elon's X has been ordered to pay George Galloway legal costs in a defamation lawsuit. This is after the politician's account was labeled an affiliate of Russia. The High Court in Dublin ordered X to pay part of Mr. Galloway's fees and ordered both sides to submit statements to the court by the end of January. So I guess Elon Musk thought that this would just go away on its own, but George was not giving. George was like, I'm in it to win it, son. George was like, I am not letting this go. Mr. Galloway, who presented shows on the state-backed broadcasters RT and Sputnik, was labeled as Russian state-affiliated media in 2022 after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So remember, after the war started in Ukraine, don't forget, guys, that RT was removed. Remember, they removed RT America from YouTube. That was all gone. A lot of people lost jobs. Like Lee Camp had a fantastic show on RT. So did Chris Hedges, Jesse Ventura, Abby Martin, Anya Parampil was also on RT. A lot of those shows on RT were pretty cool, right? So people lost jobs. And it just and then they came after their YouTube channels. Then Lee Camp lost his YouTube channel. He had to start all over. Abby Martin lost all of her videos. So that was after the war in Ukraine started. So once that was removed and George Galloway was no longer, because they count Sputnik too, no longer presenting a show for RT or Sputnik, it's why would you still have that label? Like that was the thing. That was already gone. They had already canceled it. Tara Reid was on RT. They'd already canceled it. And then they went to label the people. So that was another thing. It says he subsequently sued Twitter for defamation, saying its unjust labeling of honestly held political views is the new McCarthyism. He said the label was damaging to his reputation and described it as unjust and perverse. The lawsuit was lodged before Mr. Musk paid $44 billion to buy the social network later in the year. Mr. Musk was then renamed it X and removed the Russian media label from all the accounts. Although accounts for RT and other broadcasters have been blocked in the UK and EU to comply with sanctions. So here we go. X is denying Mr. Galloway's claims. It says after Mr. Galloway sued Twitter in Ireland, where the company's headquarters are based, it failed to issue a defense for 2 years, leading the former MP to file a motion forcing the company to respond. So Elon Musk never responded. And so George continued. It has belatedly denied Mr. Galloway's claims, but must pay the legal costs that are associated with issuing the motion. Kevin Winters, Mr. Galloway's lawyer, confirmed the decision and said both sides have been told to submit a written affidavit, by January 30th. The case underscores the broader challenge for social media platforms and navigating accountability for their past actions, particularly in the context of evolving policies and leadership changes. RT was taken off of the British Airways after Russia's invasion and has been banned from YouTube. Mr. Galloway won re-election to the Commons after winning a by-election in Rochdale in February, but lost his seat to Labour in July. So in case you guys didn't know about this, I just wanted to let you know, Elon Musk is now, they're ordered to pay George Galloway after labeling his account as Russia state affiliated media. And George Galloway also posted this on Twitter. He said, this part here, because Elon, I guess, still isn't responding. He said, "Why are you doing this, Elon Musk? You yourself denounced the corruption and mendacity of the ancient regime at Twitter. You fired the agents responsible for this." And he's pointing to the article right here. So, yeah, like, I tell you guys, I think we're going to see more of this because, like, a lot of people, people are tired of the censorship, man. People are tired of it. So it's interesting, he filed the lawsuit and he seems to be moving forward with that, continuing, but Elon Musk has got to pay for his legal fees, apparently. And Elon's a billionaire. He can handle all of that. But I don't think that Elon Musk thought that this was serious. I don't think that he thought that George Galloway would continue with it, but he is. And it makes me wonder if other people could have done the same. Interesting times, folks. Interesting times. Let's go to some of the comments here. Wild Rose says, Galloway, don't back down. Solid. Thank you, Kevin. I decided I am a George Galloway leftist. His combo of left/right views mirrors my own more than most. Hard to find my stripe just anywhere. Interesting. And Marvin says, congrats, GG. Enjoy your money. Enjoy your money. Enjoy your money. So, yeah, I guess, the walls are closing in on Elon Musk. It really makes me wonder if other accounts should have done that. Like, I'm thinking about Rachel Blevins, like she was labeled. Tara Reid was labeled at one point. Fiorella Isabel was labeled at one point. It makes me wonder if all of them should have came together and filed one big suit. I don't know. What do you guys think? Interesting. All right, guys, we have one more story left. Go ahead and smash that like button. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. This one's pretty funny. We're going to look at something here. Charlamagne the God was on The View, and he's calling out Joe Biden choosing to pardon his son, Hunter Biden. You guys know how I feel about that. I told you I thought that was ridiculous. I get it. That's his son, etc. But I said it was very hypocritical for the Democratic Party to do that, considering that they, pointed fingers at Trump when he decided to pardon certain people as well. I also said, if anything, Joe Biden should have been pardoning people that were victims of his crime bill. That's what he should have been doing. And he's been in office for 4 years, so he easily could have gotten that shit done. So there's that. But now it seems like even Charlamagne, who is definitely, pro-Democrat, was rooting for Kamala Harris, was not fond of Biden being the nominee and criticized him, but at the same time said he would still vote for him because he's not going to vote for Donald Trump. He went on to The View recently and pushed back against the women on The View about that particular issue, the pardon issue. And I want you to hear how this conversation went. Let's dive in here.
Charlamagne the God has been a vocal force in the media throughout the 2024 presidential race, and he's joining us now at the table. Please welcome back the author of the book, Get Honest or Die Lying, Charlamagne the God.
Thank you for having me back.
Okay, so my question is, after the election, you said that you were disappointed but optimistic. How are you feeling right now?
I feel the same way because, what's the other option? Right. I'm a country boy from Moncks Corner, South Carolina, raised on a dirt road. So, my mother was a Jehovah's Witness, my grandmother was a Baptist. So I still believe in this higher power called God.
Yeah.
And, you can't believe in God when, things go your way and not believe in God when things don't go your way. So at a time like this, you just got to remember your serenity prayer, which is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Because we can't change nothing.
I love that. Yeah.
First of all, I want to point out that title there of his book, which is basically a play on words from 50 Cent's album, Get Rich or Die Trying. It's interesting to me. He's like, get honest or die lying or whatever. You ain't being honest either, bruh. You're not being honest either. And I think we can all see that. I pointed out before that Charlamagne is one that you need to keep an eye on because, again, I remember when Charlamagne was on the radio in Columbia, South Carolina, when I was a student at the University of South Carolina. So I know when he's part of local radio. And I remember when he left and he went to go do the Wendy Williams show back when Wendy Williams was still on the radio. So I remember old school Charlamagne the God, right? And what's interesting to me is we have to ask this question. How did Charlamagne get to where he is so swiftly? And this is not to say that he didn't put in the work, but most people I know, and you guys, I told you there's people that they pick out. Most people that I know that have dropped out of high school, and this I'm not shaming on high school dropouts. There are people in my family that dropped out of high school, so don't take this the wrong way. But most people that I know that have dropped out of high school, they don't get those types of opportunities just handed to them. Charlamagne has been handed multiple opportunities. He's written multiple books. He gets to go into corporate media over and over and over again. So Charlamagne is one that I see that is a tool that the establishment uses and the Democratic Party also uses to try to get Black people in line. And I say that because The Breakfast Club, the show, The Breakfast Club, as a majority Black audience, right? It's a hip hop show that talks also a little bit about politics, but they become more politically heavily as we get into the election. And they'll interview like presidents and all that kind of stuff and presidential candidates at the same time. But it's a hip hop culture show. And a number of times people will ask, like, how is it that all of these people on The Breakfast Club, how is it that they get to have these conversations, these political discussions with people when they don't have the political expertise? But there's people who do have the political expertise and they can't get an interview with any of those people. So again, remember, when it comes to access, a lot of times people are willing to talk to those that are not going to push back on them too much, or they're willing to talk to those that they think don't know too much about the system or about what they're doing, and they can get by. So keep that in mind. Now let's get to the Joe Biden part.
Especially the wisdom to know the difference, right?
We can't change anything.
Can't. Not yet.
Well, 4 years from now, I guess.
Or two. You never know. But let me ask you this. Like, Trump's campaign ads for some, they're saying they were very effective. And in one in particular ad, he used a clip of you from The Breakfast Club saying, quote, Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners. You say that line was taken out of context. I know it was, but it went on to become one of his most effective campaign ads. I'm also featured in one of his campaign ads.
You might have been 1 and 2.
Yeah, I was. He he texted me and
Yours was
let
not
me
taken
know
out of
that.
context.
No.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. But
Wow.
what were you actually saying in the clip? And can you please explain that? And how does it make you feel that the campaign used you like that?
Well, it's never good to be taken out of context, but I was
Right.
I was explaining to my listeners how effective I thought the actual ad was. Like, the ad was effective before I was in it. I was just sitting at home watching football and I saw it and I was like, whoa. And so I knew the immediate reaction was going to be, people are going to say, hell no, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that. So I was explaining that to my listeners. So, it never feels good to be taken out of context, but what I didn't like the most was that they didn't do anything to combat it.
Right.
I would have ran the same ad and just said, Donald Trump, what is it? Donald Trump supports, what was it?
He was the one that was supporting tax.
Yes, Donald Trump
payer-funded
supports
sex change.
taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners. I would have ran the same ad because it was
Yeah.
legislation under him as well. And you know what else I would have did if I was our campaign? Since Donald Trump used me, I would have used Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan said Donald Trump was a threat to democracy. Joe Rogan said he thought Donald Trump was, I think, unhinged was the quote.
Right.
You got to mix it up. You got to get dirty with these people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to muddy the waters a little bit, cause confusion.
Yeah. Let me ask you something that's going on.
So this is another example where they're going to Charlamagne the God for political expertise, right? So notice how you don't see them going to other people in independent media for political expertise. People who have been doing this for years, not even me, because I haven't been doing this as long, but I'm talking about people who have been doing this for like 8, 9, 10 years. Notice you don't see them going to those people. They go to Charlamagne the God who hosts a hip hop show.
Around right now, a lot of this conversation about President Biden getting criticized from both sides of the aisle for pardoning his son Hunter after repeatedly saying he would never do it. And a lot of people are saying that it's hypocritical, et cetera, as if the other side doesn't do it. But what's your reaction to it?
I think all of the criticism is valid because, Democrats stand on this moral high ground all the time. And, they act so self-righteous. The reality is he didn't have to say anything in regards to, whether or not, his son wanted to be pardoned. He could have said, hey, man, I'm not focused on that right now. But since they were calling Trump a threat to democracy and they were saying that, nobody's above the law, but they were speaking about him, that's what they were running on. So when he kept saying things like, nobody's above the law, I respect, the jury's decision in regards to my son, he didn't believe that. But he didn't have to volunteer that lie to begin with.
I'm going to stop you.
So I agree with that part there. I do agree with this part where he said Joe Biden didn't even have to give any response to that. He really didn't. Sometimes no response is a response and you don't have to answer every question, and then people wouldn't have been able to say, oh, well, you lied. Now I can still point to him and say, you should have pardoned the victims of the crime bill. You've had 4 years in office to do that. I could still say that, but I agree with him with that point there. Now watch this.
For a second.
Uh-oh.
Only because you don't know that it was a lie. We don't know why he changed
You
his
really think he just changed his mind over Thanksgiving weekend all of a
No,
sudden?
I'm going to tell you what I think.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he changed his mind because he got sick of watching everybody else get over. And this is just my feeling, because at some point you get to the place where you just go, so I'm just going to follow the straight and narrow always, because that's what's expected of Democrats.
But that's their fault.
When did Joe Biden follow the straight and narrow? When did Joe Biden follow the straight and narrow? Was it when he lied about marching with civil rights leaders? Was it when he was buddy with Strom Thurmond and Byrd, those racist mofos down south? Was that him following the straight and narrow? Was it when he said he didn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle? Was it when he allegedly assaulted Tara Reid? They keep trying to paint this picture of Joe Biden as though he never did anything wrong, as if he's perfect. Nobody's perfect. We've all done things that are wrong and things that we may not be proud of. But the image that they're trying to paint of him, it's almost as if they're trying to prevent Joe Biden from having a tainted legacy. And based on the poll that I just saw today, the majority of voters voted and said that Joe Biden is the worst president in history. So this is the View's job, to come in and to do damage control. Now, here's Charlamagne. He feels a little bit of pressure So he's like, wait a minute.
Because that's what's expected of Democrats.
But that's their fault. They're the ones that go out.
They're
They're the ones that go out there and they stand on this moral high ground.
Listen,
they don't have to do that.
I'm a Democrat. Tell me what the moral high ground is.
The moral high ground is nobody's above the law. I respect what the jurors are saying. He don't have to do that.
So we're mad at him because he changed his.
Oh no. By the way, I'm not mad at him pardoning Hunter Biden.
But you sound like you're
No.
If I can get in on this, I actually think it.
So does everybody see what's happening here? The game that's being played? So see, this is what Charlamagne the God does. He'll push back a little bit, but the moment you start calling names like Whoopi Dibs, like, well, Joe Biden, oh, no, I'm not mad that he pardoned Hunter Biden. See, he's only willing to go but so far. That's why you'll always see him as a mouthpiece. That's why people like him and Angela Rye's out there crying somewhere probably. I saw that other video. That's why they will always be invited into those spaces, because they'll push back, but they'll never push back the way that I will. Like, they'll never come up there and say, leave the Democratic Party. It's corrupt. You guys need to go start your own party. We need to start a third party movement. They'll never do that. He'll say on the Breakfast Club when Jill Stein was there, I would like more options, but he'll still tell you to support the Democratic Party. Anytime Joe Biden sat there right in front of his face and told him, you got to figure out, listen, Jack, if you got to figure out if you're going to vote for me or Donald Trump, then you ain't black. The fact that he sat right there and Joe Biden said that mess to his face, I don't give a damn, presidential candidate or not. The fact that he sat right there and said that right to you, and you didn't even know you didn't really want to push back. That right there told you guys and showed you who Charlamagne really was. He's only going to push a little bit so that he can still maintain access, even if that means even throwing the black community under the bus. Because how you let that man sit there and say that to your face? And you have no pushback.
Went further, and this is one thing we really disagree on. Joe Biden made a point of saying we stand by our institutions and the impartiality of the Department of Justice. Democrats ran on that. The same DOJ indicted Hunter Biden. How we shouldn't be saying it's corrupt like Donald Trump does. But then in his statement pardoning Hunter Biden, he says that it was a political pursuit by his own Department of Justice.
Can you explain to me why it is that when Joe Biden does something, everybody clutches their pearls? He's wrong.
Nobody
he lied.
has criticized Donald Trump more than me or Charlamagne.
Probably because the hypocrisy, Whoopi, and also because you yourself just sat right there and tried to make it seem like you said he's straight and narrow. So you can't sit up there and say he's straight and narrow, and then you say, well, Joe Biden does something, then that means he's not straight and narrow.
I'm sorry. Yeah, people have criticized him more. I've criticized him more. We've all criticized him more, but you're missing my question. My question is, what is it that makes people flip out with Joe, but we don't have the same kind of thing?
Well, I don't think people are flipping out with Joe. I think Democrats are flipping out with Joe because Democrats believe that they don't represent what he's currently representing. But that's just not true. That's why I say they stand on this moral high ground that simply does not exist. And I think this is also the problem when we pick sides, right? We've turned political parties into teams. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. Ain't nobody more delusional than me, right? Okay? I feel like we're going to the Super Bowl every year, but I'm not delusional. Well, no, that is delusional. But when it comes...
No, he right about that one. I got to chime in for a second. He right about that one. Listen, Cowboys fans really do think they go into the Super Bowl every year. I told you guys, I love football. I've loved football for years. I love it, but I can't stand a Dallas Cowboy fan. I can't. They'll come in, and when I used to work at the sports bar, they would come in and they would start stomping and say, stomping with the big dogs. We going to Super Bowl. Cowboys going to Super Bowl. We going to Super Bowl next year. Woo! I used to hear that over and over again, and they're not going to the Super Bowl. Stop. So finally that meme came out where it was Morpheus from the Matrix, and it said, what if I told you nobody cares about those Super Bowls that the Cowboys won 20 years ago? And it was perfect. It was like music to my ears. I said, this is what I'm just going to show them from now on.
But when it comes to political parties, if you pick a side, right, if you say you're a Democrat, if you say you're a Republican, you refuse to be objective about anything.
That's why I'm an independent.
Yes, but that's not a monolith. We're not, Democrats are not a monolith.
But why can't you say when Democrats are wrong? And why can't Republicans say when Republicans are wrong?
I'll tell you when Democrats
So
are
you
wrong.
don't think Joe Biden is wrong?
No, I don't.
don't.
And can I
Well,
just point this out to you?
She doesn't say they're wrong. She don't say they're wrong. He said, why can't you say when Democrats are wrong? See, they got two different shows. See, the Breakfast Club, again, a hip hop culture show. The View, it's supposed to be like this morning. Well, it's turned into the political View over the years, but this morning daytime show, you know, and they interview a lot of these politicians, like basically on the regular. It didn't always used to be that way, more so than the Breakfast Club does. The Breakfast Club will interview the presidential candidates, but the View will have these the presidential candidates and also other politicians come on the show throughout the year, whether it's an election or not. And they still want to maintain access. So they can't go too hard on Joe Biden, or Joe Biden may say, fuck the View. I'm not coming on. Where's Corn Pop? They can't go too hard at Kamala Harris because she might turn around and say, and I was smoking weed with Tupac back in the day. You know, I used to do a little smoky, but I'm not coming on the View. So they can't go too hard at them. That's the thing, because they still want that access. That's what it's really about. But Charlamagne knows that.
The president has a part in power,
you're ridiculous.
right?
I didn't say you were ridiculous, Ms. Goldberg.
Yeah,
I would never. I said that. I just think that's
Think about
ridiculous.
it. Just think about it this way. just very quickly, can you reframe it in this way and think about it maybe in this way? The president has the ultimate part in power. Every president has done this, right?
Yeah.
And so people are saying is that Joe Biden is now a liar, as opposed to Joe Biden is someone who now knows that the person that is going to be in the White House is on a revenge tour and his son is on an enemies list. And so he is using his rightful power, his rightful political power, to pardon his son. Now, is that a lie, or is that perhaps being pragmatic, having a change of opinion, as opposed to the president-elect who has lied almost 40,000 times during his first term?
Well, I can't.
So notice you got the prosecutor, Sonny, who was a prosecutor, trying to change the definition of a lie.
Say what it is, because I'm not in
the moral high ground? Like, what's the faux outrage?
Neither one of them have the moral high ground. That's what I'm trying to get everybody to understand. But when you are a diehard Democrat or a diehard Republican, you refuse to be objective about the other party. Like, it's like we're watching them do something wrong, but we're making excuses for it. We watch Republicans do things wrong, and they make excuses for it. Why can't we just all be objective and call it what it is?
Because it's not balanced.
Because that's not what they're paid to do. And Charlamagne knows that. They're not paid to be balanced. They're not paid to say those kind of things about them. And he knows that. And that's just kind of really what it is. Yet here he comes here. See, now he's got to defend the Democrats. So he comes in here and talks about, he applauds them for reaching across the aisle. Watch that.
Your book, which is fabulous, you were on here for it and we all read it, Get Honest or Die Lying, is a lot about how we need to have meaningful conversations with people we disagree with. That's kind of your MO. And recently you went on Nikki Haley's podcast, who you don't agree with on everything. You agree with her on some things, others you don't. And you've said that people like Nikki Haley and Gavin Newsom, who very likely may run for president in the future, are doing something that all candidates should be doing. What do you mean by that?
Well, 2028 is going to be another presidential election, and I think everybody needs to start campaigning now. And the way they start campaigning now is by making real connections with people, right? I think, Gavin Newsom.
Why are they taking Charlamagne's advice on how to campaign? Charlamagne has not run for office. He's not worked on campaigns to my knowledge. So why are they taking Charlamagne's advice on political campaigns? Am I alone in this? Am I losing it?
He's been doing a phenomenal job in the media because he goes on Fox News. He did the debate with Ron DeSantis. He has his own podcast, Politicking, with Marshawn Lynch, and everything he does, he's able to make a story. Like, I think last week he was in California, in the counties that flipped red for Trump, and he was just down there speaking to them, and that became news. And I think when you have your own podcast and when you're not afraid to go in so-called enemy territory, you make a real connection with people. And it's the same thing with somebody like Nikki Haley. She got a radio show right now, so now she's able to engage this audience every single week.
Who's really good at that? Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, Pete is
phenomenal.
Pete is a politician who comes to Breakfast Club when he doesn't need us.
Yeah.
He comes to Breakfast Club just to make a connection with people. He'll be there next week, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, so look at that. He'll be there next week. Let's not bring up the fact that, see what they trying to push, the Pete Buttigieg idea? Let's not bring up the fact that black people don't like Pete. Let's not bring up the fact that when he ran for president in 2020, his support among black voters was very, very low. If I remember correctly, he was at the bottom of the list. Let's not bring that up, though, because he's coming on the show next week.
Yeah, he's coming next week. But that's what I mean. Like, people have to start making real connections with folks. Like, we talked about everybody going on the podcast, like Trump going on all the podcasts this election season. What's the next level of that? People having their own podcast. Everybody else is controlling their own narrative, so why wouldn't politicians? Athletes got their own podcast. Entertainers, comedians. Why shouldn't politicians?
Absolutely.
So everybody who wants to run in 2028, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you better start a podcast or get some type of radio show to make a real connection with people.
So this is another point that I want to bring up about Charlamagne not being aware. There's a number of politicians that have a podcast. There's a number of politicians that already have podcasts. You can find them on YouTube. Even Bernie did the podcast. Remember Bernie was doing the fireside chats? AOC has a podcast. There's a number of them. Google it, you can find it. This is, again, not being aware.
Now it's, you remember, Obama reached out to people through the internet. Now the new evolution is the podcast.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, Charlamagne, you were a hot topic for us a few weeks ago after you were on CNN with Anderson Cooper and called out cable news networks for normalizing Trump. Now that Trump has won, you say that you don't think cable news will ever truly cover him honestly again. Why?
Not even just cable news, no network. Nobody, because they didn't do it before, so why would they do it now? They're scared to death. He's the president of the United States of America.
Have you watched The View?
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. Sonny, I saw you have to apologize a couple times last week, so somebody's coming with some notes from downstairs.
Not apologizing.
Okay.
I'm making a legal note as an attorney of law.
Because you know we have a petty president, our incoming,
yes,
that is going to be very litigious.
Who is litigious, but that doesn't mean that's not a mistake.
But what does not normalizing him look like? Does that mean, because oftentimes the dilemma for me is to just not put him anywhere? Is that the
no?
Like, what is the not normalizing?
I think you should just honestly call it how you see it. Like, for example, right?
And have legal notes.
Yes, like.
But the reality is, again, mainstream media, corporate media has been calling it like they see it with Donald Trump, with the exception of Fox News, which is, right wing. The left wing corporate channels have been doing that. I never understood when he said this. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? These people still got Trump derangement syndrome from 2016. They never stopped talking about this guy. If I hear someone bring up January 6th again, I think I'm gonna jump out a window. I don't know. I was tired of it. I told people this over and over again. Most everyday people are not thinking about January 6th. People come to you and say, oh my God, weren't you afraid? Hell no, I live in Boston. Like, what? Why are you asking me this stuff? But weren't you terrified for our nation? Because people were running up steps and running through doors. I live in the Boston area. I've seen people do worse after the Red Sox won the World Series. I've seen people do worse when the Patriots win multiple Super Bowls. I've seen people climb up poles, flip cars. I've seen much worse. So for me, I was just kind of like, oh, okay. That's wild that it's happening there, but bougie people were scared. And the DC people. But I just can't. I can't do this anymore. I can't do the whole, don't bring this up to me again. Can't do it. Yes, EMK, pole climbers. If you guys look up the videos on YouTube, and you can see them too. Look up the videos of crowds after the Boston Red Sox won the World Series. And we've won quite a number since I moved here. I'm not kidding. People climbing up poles. In Philadelphia, they had to grease the poles. And they did that so people would not climb up the poles if the Eagles were to win. I remember this too. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You go out to the street, you got to live in one of these sports towns, and you'll see people get a little cray-cray. So when you see people flip cars over sports games, that's just kind of how I feel about it. But I think we're going to finish up right about here.
When I called Donald Trump a fascist, I wasn't calling him that because of something I heard Democrats say. I was calling him that because of the things that were coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Right? When he was saying things like, he wants to suspend the Constitution to overthrow the results of an election, right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying that. But now, when you have elected officials also saying that, but then all of a sudden when he's president, that just goes away.
Disappears.
But it didn't go away. They kept bringing up that Donald Trump was a fascist. What's really interesting is that Charlamagne the God doesn't see the elements of fascism that have also been, implemented by the Democratic Party. We've been talking about censorship and free speech on this show since how long? You saw what happened with Twitter. You see what's happening right now with TikTok. But all of a sudden, when it comes to that issue, there's no fascism with the Democratic Party. It's only with Donald Trump and Orange Man bad. Get out of here, man. Get out of here. Charlamagne the God. Am I pointing the right way? Where am I pointing? This way. Charlamagne the God is a tool that the establishment uses and that corporate media uses as an illusion of someone to represent what they think that Black people want. Hell, if you would have listened to Charlamagne the God, you would have thought Kamala Harris was really going to nail this election. If you would have listened to Charlamagne the God, you would have thought that Kamala Harris had one hell of a chance and Black people really wanted to support her. So he is there as a tool. And people need to start asking these questions. And I've been pointing this out a couple times on the show. Pay attention to, in particular, Black people that the establishment uses as tools to spread their message. Now they've made their way to urban hip hop. They've made their way to the urban podcasts, the hip hop podcasts to spread the message because they said, let's reach Black people that listen to this. Oh, Black people may not be watching CNN and MSNBC. Let's get the younger Black people. They're listening to the Breakfast Club. Next thing you know, it'll be Club Shay Shay. Then it'll be Joe Budden's podcast. And this is what they'll do. So they'll just keep moving their way around to try to reach, in particular, Black people, and try to get you to come out and support the Democratic Party. And that didn't work this time. I mean, even Kamala went on to Club Shay Shay and people still weren't feeling her like that. Black people weren't feeling her like that. You see, she lost the Black vote. Not feeling her like that. And this is a good example. TT Lay said, yep, but they're not good at it. No, they're not. They are not. Well said there. But just remember that Charlamagne, he's a tool of the establishment. Keep that in mind. And you'll see as time goes by, pay attention next year, pay attention 2025. You'll see as time goes by, watch and see who tries to align theirself with the Charlamagnes. Watch and see who in so-called independent media, and we didn't have this conversation already, the people who try to align theirself with the Charlamagnes. Watch. All right. Let's go to the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Charlamagne the God lying right there. He is either fronting like he's Christian or fronting like he's a member of the 5% nation of gods and earth. A Black man don't call himself God unless he is a member. That's an offshoot of the Nation of Islam. I think that name came from a rapper. I thought he said that's where he got it from. Or was it a rapper or a drug dealer? I have to look that up. I thought he got that name from somewhere else. But let me go to some of these comments here. Thank you, Professor Zinkus. And Charlamagne knows better. Every now and then something seeps out and you think he gets it. Then he goes right back to the establishment. He knows who writes his checks. Bingo. And thank you, Ravina. I'd go nuts without Sabby's community. I don't talk politics in real life. You know what? Other people have told me that too, that they don't talk about it in real life. Thank you, Phenomenal Mysticism. Alyssa Farah Griffin and Sarah Haynes seem to be the only ladies on that panel that have more intelligence than other ladies. The others are too stupid. Was Alyssa Farah on Rising? Was she the one that was one of the co-hosts after Crystal and Sagar left? I'm trying to remember. I have to look that up. Thank you, Buster Peak. They're all missing the bigger picture, which includes much bigger crimes, re Ukraine. Hunter's drug addiction is being exploited to cover up for major corruption. There it is. There it is. But they would never bring someone on that's going to mention that. Yantra says, yep, he's just a liberal Karen's projection of what they want Black people to be, not anywhere close to who we really are. There you go. And thank you, Phenomenal Mysticism. Sunny Hostin makes legal notes on the show, not for the purpose of credibility, but for the reason for protecting The View or herself from being sued. There you go. Let's get that Rumple rant. Thank you. Hey, hey, hey. Thank you, Wild Rose. Come for the politics, stay for the singing. I like to add in a tune every now and then if I can. They won't let me play music on here. I can't play music on YouTube, so you got to listen to me. Sorry. If they would allow us to play, some of those songs, like, we would be jamming up in here, I can tell you. All right, guys, that is it for me tonight. Just a reminder, I am not live this Sunday or next Sunday. I have something this Sunday. And then next Sunday, I do have the mutual aid event. So you will see me live again on Tuesday evening, but there are plenty of clips for you guys to watch. We did 7 stories tonight, and I still have stories that we clipped from last night as well. So I hope all of you guys have a good night and a good weekend. And shout out to Cooper. Thank you, Cooper. Cooper gifted 5 Sabs memberships. Thank you so much, Cooper. All right, guys, have a good evening. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.